Chapter 693. Recently that silly Luo Xiao has been quite quiet, which makes people a bit bored. In the Immortal 5 area, it was still that quiet courtyard. Wang Lu put down the writing brush in his hand and looked like he wanted to continue. As his secretary Hai Yunfan had to remind him, "Wang Lu, now there are more than 100 people working overtime with you. Don't take the lead in slacking off." Wang Lu sneered and said, "More than 100 people working overtime still need me, the boss, to be busy, which can only mean that they are incompetent. According to the principle of survival of the fittest, they should all be fired. In order to keep their jobs, I have to take a break from my busy schedule to slack off." Hai Yunfan suddenly wanted to throw the writing brush away. Wang Lu, this single bird man, was living in the office anyway, so it didn't matter if he worked overtime and got hemorrhoids. However, he had a wife. During this time he had been working overtime with Wang Lu every day, so Feifei had already complained a little. However, if he told the truth, Wang Lu would definitely suggest that he find a few strong men to comfort Feifei. This slut had always been vicious to married people. After thinking about it, Hai Yunfan said, "You look more and more like your master now." Wang Lu immediately threw the writing brush away and said, "Who is like that slut? I, your father, have worked hard for the Wuxia League and can be called a model for the world, a teacher for all ages. Don't have eyes but fail to recognize Mount Tai. Mount Tai, please don't slack off. This deity stage team fight will start in 5 days, but the plan is only half done. It's really..." Wang Lu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I will definitely finish it before the fight starts. You just have to make sure that the details of the deductions made by those who work overtime outside the room are not wrong." Hai Yunfan sighed and said, "Those who work overtime are the elite forces of the major sects who are good at deduction, and they have been reviewed many times so there will be no mistakes. The problem is that your deadline can't be stuck on the day before the fight. When the plan is made, you should at least give people time to adapt, right? This is the most important game since the start of the grand competition. Even the head of your Lingjian school is going to take action. You should at least be more professional." Wang Lu said, "It's because of my professionalism that I've been so meticulous with the proposal. Otherwise, I could have just written a 3-word mantra and done with it. I could have finished the draft 10 days ago." Hai Yunfan was slightly curious. 3-syllable Sanskrit mantra? Go 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 go. Help help help. Disperse disperse disperse. *CK. *CK. How about it? Was it concise and comprehensive? Did it effectively cover all the possible situations in a team battle? Hai Yunfan sighed and ignored Wang Lu, concentrating on the matters at hand. After Wang Lu had his fill of fishing, he began to draft a battle plan. 5 days later, the 5-person team battle of deity stage would officially start in the Immortal 1 area. This was the highest standard fight in the past few months, so there was no room for mistakes. The candidates for the battle had long been determined. The sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect, Feng Yin Taoist Master, would lead the team. The other 4 super sects would each send 1 person, and then carefully selected 5 substitutes to form a team of 10 people. In terms of individual strength, this team of 10 people could basically represent the highest level of the Wuxia League. It was extremely difficult to further strengthen it. Therefore, if they wanted to improve their odds of winning, they had to work hard on the pre-battle preparation. This would also be the first time since the start of the Wuxia League that they would really go all out. The cheerleading plan, which was previously regarded as a joke by many people, was officially ready to be implemented. The pill furnace rooms of the major sects had been operating at full capacity in the past few days. Secret medicine, immortal medicine, and even forbidden medicine had been continuously refined. Shengjing sect had opened their treasure house and allowed the contestants to borrow their magical treasures. Basically, everything that could be done had been done to the extreme. Only Wang Lu's battle plan had not yet come out, which really made many people anxious. However, people also knew the importance of this plan, so it was inevitable that Wang Lu's work would be slow. The burden was too heavy. This group of Taoist masters of deity stage was famous in 9 regions, but in the grand competition, they were not as good as those King Pill. In the King Pill, there were at least heaven-defying talents like Wang Wu and Wang Lu. Among the deity stage cultivators, perhaps only Feng Yin had a chance of winning in a one-on-one fight. The rest of them were simply unable to compete with Dixian. And this gap would be more obvious in the team battle. Dixian had joined forces to resist the fallen immortals, so what kind of situation had they not seen? What kind of dangerous situation had they not experienced? Their team cooperation was by no means comparable to the temporary team of the Wuxia League. If the individual strength and team cooperation were not as good as the opponent, how could they fight this battle? In fact, everyone had thought about this problem, but no one had thought about the result. Wang Lu said that he probably had a way which made people even more amazed, so they threw the burden to him. Fighting for a glimmer of hope in the impossible was what Wang Lu had to do now. After no one knew how long, when Hai Yunfan began to feel dizzy, there came the sound of a pen hitting the table. Turning his head, he saw Wang Lu put down the pen in his hand with a relieved look, which made Hai Yunfan quite surprised. Is it done? The second half seems to be going very well. Wang Lu nodded and said, yes, I thought of a way to cut through the Gordian knot. Cut through the Gordian knot? Hai Yunfan was pleasantly surprised at first, but then he suddenly had an ominous premonition. He had been with Wang Lu for a long time, so he felt that if he said such a thing, it would definitely not be the result he wanted. Sure enough, the next moment, Wang Lu's words made Hai Yunfan's chest feel stuffy, and his blood and qi surged. I've decided to overturn the previous plan and redo it. With that, Wang Lu burned the most critical pages in his hand. Hai Yunfan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He forcibly operated his cultivation method and used his magical power that was close to True Yuan to move his blood and qi so that he didn't vomit blood. Wang Lu explained, I just calculated it myself. According to the normal method, no matter how I calculate, the chance of winning is 0. Seeing that Hai Yunfan was still angry, Wang Lu had to continue to explain, deduction is not omnipotent. Even if your family's supreme Tianluan calculated, it's impossible for a mortal to win against Hichu. Now we are facing a similar situation. The strength gap is too big to be made up by deduction. What's more, it's not like the other side doesn't have the ability to calculate. Xuanxian's calculation ability is stronger than Supreme Tianluan's, and of course much stronger than mine. His only weakness is that he can't calculate me, but if I don't fight in this battle, his interference will be much less. Hai Yunfan said, we have known about these situations for a long time. But you didn't choose to give up before, and you said that although the situation is difficult, there is still a chance of winning. That's why so many of us are willing to help you. Why do you suddenly give up now? Wang Lu said, I thought there was a glimmer of hope before because the group of overtime workers outside miscalculated. What? Wang Lu waved his hand and pulled out a few pieces of paper full of calculations. This is the calculation report about the effect of the Soaring Dragon Array. It tells me that there are 17 spells that can achieve a 5-fold effect in the Soaring Dragon Array. Based on this, I designed a set of serial killing array. If I'm lucky, I can instantly kill one of the opponents. Then there's a chance to fight 5 against 4. However, the 5-fold effect of the Soaring Dragon Array is really amazing, so I have some doubts. However, the Soaring Dragon Array is a secret of Royal Soldier Sect, and the core formula has not been made public. At that time, I was busy calculating other things, so I had to believe it for the time being. However, later on, no matter how I think about it, I felt that it was wrong. After reading this calculation several times, I finally determined that the idiot of Royal Soldier Sect must have made a mistake when providing the core formula, and a certain key value was miscalculated by 10 times. The actual result is not even 5 times, it's already very good to have a 2-fold increase. Upon hearing this, Hai Yunfan was stunned. He quickly grabbed the calculation paper and carefully reviewed it. After a long time he was still confused. Wang Lu contemptuously took back the calculation paper. Is this the elite talent of 10,000 Arts Sect? Hai Yunfan coughed and said, I'm a secretary, not a calculator. In short, do you think the people of Royal Soldier Sect gave you the wrong data? Wang Lu said, it should not be intentional. Royal Soldier Sect is not good at fine calculation. The Soaring Dragon Array is an ancient array. I'm afraid no one has ever asked them to refine and digitize the various effects of the array before. However, this time the construction period is tight, so some mistakes are inevitable. I think the several overtime workers of Royal Soldier Sect have tried their best, and Xiang Liang personally came to supervise the work, which is also full of sincerity. It's really that the intelligence of the barbarians is limited. Hai Yunfan said. Isn't your sex discrimination too blatant? How could there be discrimination? I treat everyone equally. In front of you, a disciple of 10,000 Arts Sect, I criticize the intelligence of Royal Soldier Sect. In front of the disciples of Royal Soldier Sect, I will also ridicule the disciples of 10,000 Arts Sect as sissies. What the? You treat everyone equally? Hai Yunfan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but soon he really couldn't laugh anymore. Wang Lu, now that the plan is invalid, do you want to give up on this match? Wang Lu said, of course not. There are so many people watching. If I say that the calculation is wrong, the plan will be invalid. Not to mention that my reputation will be ruined. What about the previous reimbursement? Hai Yun Fan asked in surprise. You choose not to give up because of this reason? Wait a minute, what's with the reimbursement? I don't know about it at all. Wang Lu said, of course I can't let you know without going through the formal process. In short, don't worry, I will come up with an alternative plan as soon as possible. Hai Yun Fan asked. What about those people outside? Let them disperse? Of course not. There's no need for a third person to know that the original plan is invalid except for you. Nowadays, people's psychological quality is generally poor. If they know more, I'm afraid that there will be some bullshit like the Heavenly Book building. What's more, the new plan also needs coolies to help with the calculation. Let them continue to stick to their posts and serve the Wanxian League. Hai Yun Fan sighed. He wanted to ignore Wang Lu and continue to work, but he didn't know how he could work on a plan that had already been scrapped. He wanted to go home to find his wife, but he also felt that it was a bit irresponsible to leave more than 100 colleagues behind. Seeing him depressed, Wang Lu said with a smile, I'll give you a difficult mission. The new plan can be used. Hai Yun Fan said, what? Help me prepare the compensation plan for the deceased in advance. I want it for all 10 people. Compensation plan? Hai Yun Fan was stunned. You mean, you don't think that no one will die in this team fight, do you? Wang Lu's voice was clear and cold. Even if Royal Soldier Sect didn't make that idiotic mistake and my plan was perfectly executed, at least 2 of the 5 people would die in the end. With the new plan, it wouldn't be surprising even if the team was wiped out. I know that a Taoist Master of Deity stage usually has a means of resurrection, but can you guarantee that those means will be effective in the arena? Hearing this, Hai Yun Fan suddenly raised a question. Why not? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was also startled, and then he tightly frowned. Yeah, why can't it work? Chapter 694. Hai Yun Fan never thought that his casual question would cause a chain reaction. At that time, when he heard Wang Lu's serious words that the 5 Taoist Masters of Deity stage were in danger of being wiped out, he wondered why Wang Lu had such a basis. At Deity stage, it was very difficult for a cultivator to die unless they courted death themselves, such as resisting the divine tribulation or running to the extremely cold netherworld. Otherwise, even if the body was shattered and the primordial spirit was shaken, there was a way to recover. As for the deity stage elites who were selected to represent the Wanxian League, there were quite a few of them who had tasted the taste of divine tribulation. If these cultivators wholeheartedly wanted to save their lives, even a Supreme of Unity stage would find it difficult to destroy their body and soul. Unless it was like Dixian Shenmo, who directly used the great immortal technique of yin and yang division, which might catch them off guard and disintegrate them in an instant. Otherwise they could escape with their lives. Unless the other party deliberately targeted these means of resurrection and forcibly prevented them from escaping. For Dixian it was not difficult to kill people on purpose. At the beginning of the grand competition, under the instruction of Black, in order to kill the Wanxian League, Dixian really made a ruthless move. They killed many cultivators of the Wanxian League in the arena, which really lowered the morale of the Wanxian League a lot. Later, Wang Lu fought tit for tat and killed Little Poison Immortal and Ravenous Wolf in the King Pill fight, which made Dixian restrain themselves a bit. After that, there were few major casualties in the fighting department. On the one hand, Dixian no longer deliberately killed people. On the other hand, the people of the Wanxian League continued to strengthen their life-saving measures. In theory, there was indeed a risk in this deity stage group fight. The battlefield was no longer a simple one-on-one situation. Under extreme conditions, they might be surrounded by people, forming a 1-on-5 situation. At that time, a little carelessness would lead to the destruction of body and soul. However, that was based on the premise that Dixian showed no mercy and deliberately killed people. According to the current situation, the Dixian might not be so happy to kill people. Wang Lu had already killed 2 of those who loved to kill the most. That was why Hai Yun Fan found it strange. Why did Wang Lu want this team battle to be so tragic? Could it be that his battle plan was for the 5 of them to advance as a group and force the other party to join them? Then, when the battle started, everyone would self-destruct at the same time and perish together. This kind of extreme combat plan was actually put forward in the beginning. The barbarians of Royal Soldier Sect thought so. Moreover, at that time the person who took the lead to work overtime outside to provide the plan also shouted the extremely high-end slogan, "For victory and glory, what's a mere life worth mentioning? If you sissies don't dare to go, our Royal Soldier Sect will send 5 Taoist Masters of Deity stage." Well, although Royal Soldier Sect was also one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, and in terms of pure combat power, they were only under Xingjing Sect, but 5 deity stage cultivators were not something that could be casually thrown away. Upon hearing this, Hai Yunfan was simply amazed by Royal Soldier Sect. However, later on, when he took a closer look, he saw that the person who took the lead to shout was holding a bottle of Royal Soldier Sect's specialty liquor, Fort Fine Wine. His whole face was flushed and he shook his head. Drunken cultivators of Royal Soldier Sect always had the reputation of being possessed by a true immortal. As long as they were drunk, they were not afraid of the heaven or the earth. They even dared to blow the astral wind of the ninth heaven. As for whether their body would be blown to pieces or their primordial spirit would scatter, that would be seen when the time came. Every year there would be cultivators of Royal Soldier Sect who died because they were drunk. However, they never changed and even took pride in it. So much so that the current lead disciple, Xiang Liang, was criticized by many cultivators in the mountain for losing the soul of Royal Soldier Sect because he didn't drink a drop of wine. Seeing the plan put forward by the cultivator who had the soul of Royal Soldier Sect, Hai Yunfan was both angry and amused at the same time. He made up a lie to fool the drunken overtime man, and the plan was not reported to Wang Lu at all. Wang Lu was indeed a busy man, so as his secretary he didn't have to waste his time by giving him this unreliable plan. But now, it seemed that the person of Royal Soldier Sect refused to give up and directly reported it to Wang Lu? That shouldn't be the case. Even if the people of Royal Soldier Sect were not sensible, they had no way to see Wang Lu directly. Or was it that he misunderstood? Wang Lu wasn't thinking of a crazy self-explosion tactic, but was really worried that Dixian would be ruthless? But, was it really necessary? Unlike King Pil Yuanying, a deity stage cultivator was already quite a high-level fighting force. In the face of the fallen immortals, they could more or less act as cannon fodder, so they should not be wasted on internal friction. If they could realize this, they really didn't need to kill them now. Unfortunately, Wang Lu didn't speak. He just frowned and pondered. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the desk, which made Hai Yunfan upset. Just when he couldn't help but ask, Wang Lu explained, "It's not about this time, I'm thinking about the past." The past? Hai Yunfan was confused. The past? Are you thinking about your old lover? Another confused voice came in. On the spot, Wang Lu brought out the immortal sword Rouge Tears and struck it in the direction of the voice. The sword momentum was so fierce that Hai Yunfan subconsciously took a few steps back. However, the fierce sword momentum came to an abrupt stop. The sharp tip of Rouge Tears was gently pinched by two white and tender fingers, and it could no longer move forward even half a step. Then a furious voice rang out. "Wang Lu, are you really going to rebel? What did I do wrong and you hit me?" Wang Lu slowly took back the Rouge Tears and said, "Just in advance. You're going to get into trouble sooner or later anyway." "What the hell, you can even advance this? Don't you have any shame?" While cursing, Wang Wu unceremoniously leaned over to look at the document on Wang Lu's desk. After a few glances, she raised her eyebrows and said, "Deity Stage Team Battle Plan? What's so difficult about that? Just find a few idiots from Royal Soldier Sect, give each of them a bottle of Ford wine, get them drunk, and then let them go to Dixian to blow themselves up." Hai Yunfan simply prostrated himself before this pair of master and disciple, especially Taoist master of non-phase, who was simply a peerless exotic flower that only appeared once in tens of thousands of years, no hundreds of thousands of years in 9 regions. It was really amazing that Wang Lu could actually reach this step under her torture. Just as he was thinking, he heard Wang Lu say, "What if they fail to blow themselves up? The attention of this competition is too high, so there's no need to take this risk. Later, when the opportunity is more appropriate, I'll let the people of Royal Soldier Sect be human bombs." Wang Wu excitedly said, "Remember to tell me in advance, I'll go to the black market to bet." Hai Yunfan couldn't bear it anymore, so he got up and said goodbye. "There's an emergency at home, I'll leave first." Wang Lu pointed at Hai Yunfan's receding back and sighed to Wang Wu, "See, this is the working atmosphere of our organizing committee's overtime team. A dignified disciple of 10,000 Arts Sect works overtime until he's hungry and thirsty. He can't even take care of his work and wants to go home to find his wife to vent his lust." As soon as his voice fell, Hai Yunfan, who was halfway in front, came back with a livid face. He sat down at the secretary's desk and silently began to deal with official business. Wang Lu smiled and no longer flirted with his secretary. Instead, he sternly asked Wang Wu, "What are you doing here? Seeing if you need any help here. In the past few days, I was caught wandering around the City of Immortals by Senior Brother Sect leader. He said that since I have time to slack, I might as well help you. So, I came here to freeload. Tell me, when do you have a meal here? I'm hungry." While urging for treatment, Wang Wu seriously looked at the newly written material in front of Wang Lu. With just a glance, she smiled and said, The original plan is scrapped? You've started anew? But, looking at your handwriting, it stopped abruptly. What difficult problem did you encounter? Tell me about it. Just give me 10,000 spirit stones to solve a problem. The nearby Hai Yun fan could not help but open his mouth wide. This pair of master and disciple was too close. This kind of tacit understanding based on mutual insult and even killing was simply unheard of. These two people were really familiar with each other as if they were one person. No, they even knew each other better than each other. It was just like, however, before he could think too much, the dialogue between the master and disciple had gone deeper. Wang Lu said, I did encounter a problem. In fact, it's a problem that I've been puzzled about since the start of the grand competition. Why did that group of Dixian kill so fiercely in the beginning? Wang Wu sneered and said, Nonsense, we're not the parents of Dixian, so why should we be soft when we kill them? Wang Lu shook his head and said, even if they're really parents, if there's a dispute of interest, it doesn't prevent them from killing them. The problem is, we and the Dixian, in general, cooperate more than compete, mutually beneficial than mutually damaging. We have a common enemy. This grand competition is to better integrate the strength of all people and calm disputes, so we came up with a plan. Wang Wu said, what do you think is the significance of this kind of principle? Then why did they agree to it? The bet between you and Bai Zhe is just one aspect. If the Dixian really want to veto it, they can also do it shamelessly. But in the end they agreed. Wang Wu asked, then what do you want to say? Agreeing to compete with you is for the sake of the overall situation. In the competition, in order to win quickly, they used some ruthless means. They cut the Gordian knot and quickly deterred the opponent, which could reduce each other's losses. What's wrong with this? Wang Lu said, there's nothing wrong with it, so I haven't thought too much about it. But I just suddenly had an idea. Why didn't the Dixian use the opposite means? For example, when they kill people, they can deliberately let them go to show magnanimity. Wang Wu asked with a smile, what's the benefit of being magnanimous? Wang Lu sternly said, the benefit is that I won't go all out. That's a good reason. Indeed, it's a bit strange. The person in charge of the Dixian side is a man in black, not the brainless Bai Zhe. It stands to reason that they shouldn't be so ruthless. Wang Lu said, I think even Bai Zhe might not be able to make that decision. Killing to deter the opponent is right in theory, but it's actually a crazy method that can easily lead to unpredictable side effects. Wang Wu said, yes, the risk is a bit big. There is no unwarranted risk in the world. There should be other benefits for them to do this. For example, what other secrets are there in the city of immortals? When it came to this, Wang Wu's eyes began to shine. Wang Lu knew what she was thinking without looking at it. You should give up the idea of being a treasure snatcher as soon as possible. This is the hometown of the Dixian. Be careful that you don't steal the treasure and get caught to be trained. The master and disciple seriously exchanged their opinions. Wang Wu was relatively careless, but she still guided Wang Lu's thoughts step by step. Hai Yun Fan was listening at the side. His mind was also racing. When he heard this, he interrupted. These are just your speculations. Do you have any real data? Wang Lu said, of course not. Otherwise it would not be speculation but a statement of fact. The problem is that the Wanxian League and the Dixian are now in a hostile relationship. The two sides are on guard against each other, so the information is very scarce. Where do you want me to find real data? Wang Wu suddenly said, isn't it easy to find real data? Just ask someone. Ask who? Who in the city of immortals knows more about the Dixian than I do? Wang Wu said, Xian Mo, doesn't she have a good relationship with you? If you have a question, just go straight to her door and ask her. If you can find out a man or a woman, our Wanxian League camp will be unprecedentedly strong. Wang Lu was silent for a long time. That makes sense. He suddenly thought of Shizhou. Chapter 695. Hai Yun Fan really didn't want to do it anymore. It was not that he was dissatisfied with the secretary position. In fact, as a cultivator from the royal family, Hai Yunfan's recognition of the secretary position was far higher than that of ordinary people. His spirit root qualification was not the best. After the immortal gathering, Lingzhen School recommended him to 10,000 Arts sect for this reason. Later on, his prospects for development in 10,000 Arts sect were indeed better. However, compared with the lead disciples like Zhan Zai and Wang Lu, the gap was like the difference between cloud and mud. Hai Yun Fan knew that it was difficult for him to reach the end of the path of immortal cultivation. He even deduced his own future and concluded that he would most likely be stuck in the Yuaning stage to deity stage. If he was lucky, he could probably reach the middle-level deity stage. If he wanted to go further, he could only resign himself to fate. Such an achievement was certainly not bad. Even in 10,000 Arts sect, it could be regarded as outstanding. However, compared to his current work, what was it? Although he was just working for Taoist Master King Pill, the status of this King Pill was no less than that of a supreme in the general sense. He might not be as good as the sect leader of those high-rank sects, but even the elders of ordinary sects had to be polite to Wang Lu. To be the secretary of such a person was something that many Taoist masters of deity stage were eager to do. Because Wang Lu's power was too great, the resources that Wang Lu could use were almost as much as all the resources of a high-rank sect. Even if he went through the formal channel, the remaining resources were also enviable, let alone Wang Lu's informal channel. Of course, the reason why he went through the informal channel for reimbursement of resources was not for his own selfishness. Wang Lu's non-phase method and primal chaos heaven-splitting sword didn't need much resources, which could be supplied by Lingjian school itself. But there were many ideas about the grand competition that were difficult to do in a formal way. Therefore, he could only intercept the resources and invest in the experiment himself. Wang Lu did not care much about the power and efficiency of the chief planner of the Grand Competition Organizing Committee, but most people definitely cared about it. In immortal cultivation, wealth was the first, and most people's wealth was definitely not enough. Even among the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, only the sect master, head disciple, and some of the higher-ups of the Wanxian League were not restricted in terms of resources. Although the cultivation of the other ordinary elders was not low, they still had to work hard if they wanted resources. Wang Lu's power was astonishing. As his personal secretary, if Hai Yunfan wanted to operate, the benefits he would receive would naturally be indescribable. During this period of time, there was an endless stream of people from various sects asking him to do things for them. Even his wife Yi Feifei could not bear it. But he really didn't want to do it now. It wasn't that the treatment wasn't good enough, but that he felt that he wasn't capable enough. He couldn't keep up with the pace of his superiors and was too ashamed to continue enjoying the special treatment. Wang Lu's pace of doing things was too fast. One moment he was still slacking off in his study room, and the next moment he decided to leave the City of Immortals and talk to Shanimo. This guy really didn't think of himself as a leader. He didn't do the work at hand, nor did he make an appointment to meet with Dixian. He just ran away like visiting. If it were someone else, this general who contacted Dixian's side in private at Will would be arrested and interrogated to see if there was any act of betrayal. Fortunately, he was Wang Lu, so the possibility of him defecting to the enemy was not high. However, from a procedural point of view, his private contact was no different from a mutiny. Therefore, in order to reduce trouble, someone needed to make this kind of irregular behavior in line with the procedure. This person, of course, could not be anyone else but his secretary Hai Yunfan. Completing all kinds of procedures for Wang Lu had already given Hai Yunfan a big headache. What was more troublesome was that Wang Lu was too difficult to serve. He completely refused to understand the hard work of his subordinates. As soon as he left, he came back and called Hai Yunfan. "Let's go together." Hai Yunfan immediately became anxious. "You're going to see Dixian, why do you call me?" Wang Lu curiously said, "You're too sloppy as a secretary. How can a leader go out without a secretary? If I go, who will make up the procedures for you?" Hai Yunfan tried to argue. Wang Lu waved his hand. "Write a letter to Supreme He Tu and ask him for help." "Damn, do you really think you're the illegitimate son of Supreme He Tu? You want other people to help you with this kind of thing?" Wang Lu looked at Hai Yunfan, shook his head and sighed. "Little Hai, you've become so boring after getting married. You might as well get divorced." Hai Yunfan was so angry that he wanted to laugh. "You sound like I betrayed you by getting married." "Ftah." Wang Wu laughed without caring about her image. "Sure enough, there's an affair. Let me publicize it." Wang Lu was too lazy to pay attention to this woman. At the same time, he also saw that Hai Yunfan couldn't stand the toss. "If you want to stay, then stay. If you don't cherish this kind of good job, then all you have left in this life is to wash diapers for children." Then, without calling Hai Yunfan, he pulled Wang Wu out of the City of Immortals and came to the bright river of stars. Today's group of immortal tombs seemed to have only one core content, the City of Immortals. The grand competition had attracted too many people's attention, but in fact, the basic function of the group of immortal tombs was still there. Countless small worlds rose and fell in the river of stars, swallowing the massive spiritual energy of 9 regions. Similarly, there were many cultivators looking for immortal affinity in these small worlds. The grand competition was indeed the current theme of 9 regions, but many people who could not participate in the competition had to have their own cultivation. It was not the first time for Wang Lu to come here. He stopped in front of the whirlpool of stars for a moment and recalled the coordinates that he vaguely remembered when he went to heavenly Earth in the past. He then stretched his hand forward to go deep into it. However, at this time, a voice suddenly rang out behind him. Wang Lu, what are you doing here? Coincidentally, the person who came was Xian Mo. Wang Lu looked back and smiled. I'm looking for you. Xian Mo sighed. Do you look for people by breaking into the door? Don't you know it's dangerous? Wang Lu said, did you bury a landmine in front of your house? Is this the trendy decoration style of Dixian? In short, why are you looking for me? While saying that, Xian Mo looked at Wang Wu with a slightly vigilant look. Then he also reached out and stirred the whirlpool of stars. A dragon's roar came from the whirlpool of stars, and then his eyes suddenly opened up. It was the familiar heavenly earth. Wang Lu laughed, turned to his master and said, pay up. Wang Wu looked unhappy. I can't believe this guy didn't move. How smart was Xian Mo? As soon as he frowned, he realized that the two of them were betting on whether he would move or not after his resuscitation. He was immediately speechless. You guys still have the leisure to do these things? Wang Lu said, I'm just taking a break from being busy. Moreover, this time I have something important to discuss with you. As he said that, he walked into Xian Mo's side of the world. Seeing that Wang Lu was so generous, Xian Mo had a slightly favorable impression in her heart. After a few months, heavenly earth didn't seem to have changed much. The situation of men and women being separated was no different from when Wang Lu left. However, of course, this was not because Xian Mo still insisted on extreme sexism, but because she didn't have much interest in running her own side of the world. For her, this place was like a palace with no people. What's the matter? The place where Xian Mo received Wang Lu and Wang Wu was the highest heaven of heavenly earth. It was a magnificent but secluded and deserted hall. As the host, Xian Mo served fragrant tea to the two guests and asked about the purpose of their visit. Wang Lu also went straight to the point. This time, how are you going to fight in the group battle of Huashan level? Xian Mo was silent for a long time. Are you kidding? Running to someone's home to ask such confidential questions, did he want her to be suspected by her companions? Wang Lu said, I want to know, do you want to seriously determine the winner or the loser, or do you want to seriously determine the life and death? Xian Mo then realized what Wang Lu really wanted to ask. From my point of view, of course, this battle is only about the winner and the loser, not life and death. And the others don't have different opinions at the moment. This answer was, of course, relatively optimistic, but Wang Lu was not satisfied. Aren't you the leader? Do you need to be so careful with your words? The person who made the decision was not you? Xian Mo said, you should have seen that it was not me a long time ago. Wang Lu nodded. It's good that it's not you. Strictly speaking, I quite like you and I don't want to count that account on you. Xian Mo didn't care much about Wang Lu's love, but he was a little sad about the account he said. Black didn't do that on purpose? Wang Lu smiled and said, is it because of a slip of the tongue? Whether it was intentional or not, everyone knows it. Xian Mo was silent for a while and then said, I'm sorry. You didn't make the decision, so what's the use of apologizing? Xian Mo was a bit tired. That's right. But Black has given up that plan, and it should not happen again in the future. In the face of the fallen immortals, we should work together. That's right. That's why I wonder what the person who made that decision was thinking. Wang Lu seemed a bit reluctant. Cutting the Gordian knot is a reasonable theory. If you can win with an overwhelming advantage, the internal friction will be smaller than a stalemate. But there is more than one theory that makes sense. Why choose the riskiest one? Didn't he think about the consequences of the backlash from the Wanxian League if the morale is not suppressed? Black, he is indeed such a person. Xian Mo said, he only asks for the result and rarely considers the side effects. As for the backlash, before that game no one thought that you would do it so ruthlessly. Wang Lu smiled and said, I did it so ruthlessly? It's not your Dishan's turn to say that. I only killed 2 people, but the number of people in your hands is at least 10 times that. But let's not talk about the first thing first. Is it convenient for you to tell me the story of Black in detail? Xian Mo obviously didn't want to say too much, but Wang Lu put down the teacup, looked at her attentively and then said a sentence. I don't trust Black, so I won't trust others who trust Black. On the basis of this distrust, it's difficult for me to do it properly. You said that you have given up the killing plan, but your words don't count. I can't trust you. Xian Mo was suddenly in a dilemma because what Wang Lu said was very reasonable, so she could not refute it at all. If it were someone else, they would probably turn a deaf ear to Wang Lu's threat, but Xian Mo would not. especially when there was still Wang Wu standing behind Wang Lu. I understand. About Black, I'll give you a brief explanation. However, this made Xian Mo a bit embarrassed. Chapter 696. Xian Mo was an honest person. She said it was a simple story, but in fact, the story was not that simple. She didn't know much about the origin of Black. She only knew that the man appeared in front of her with the former boss and always stood behind the boss. He was very low-key and humble, and even had some inferiority complex. However, although his mentality was humble, once he did things, he was swift and decisive, ruthless and merciless. In the fight against the fallen immortals, he made great contributions with his unique coldness and cruelty. However, he refused to take credit at all. Every time he would hide behind the scenes, showing his noble character and unquestionable integrity. However, Black's character was indeed eccentric, so people admired him, but they didn't think about pushing him to any leadership position. Black had always been behind the boss, and the boss didn't use him as a commander. What's more, the situation against the fallen immortals at that time was very bad. They couldn't compete with them even if they tried their best, so they didn't care so much about fighting for power. Later, the war suffered a great defeat. The boss died, many people died, and the strongholds were uprooted one by one. The impregnable fortress was vulnerable under the siege of the fallen immortals, and the flag of resistance raised by the Dixian people drifted away in the wind and rain. At that time, almost everyone felt desperate about the situation. Even the murderous ravenous wolf, Shuero too, and the others grinned and said that they would give the other side a little bit of color, and they had the idea of perishing together. Only Black, who remained indifferent from beginning to end, did what he should do step by step according to the boss's order before his death. The boss told him to save as many people as he could. Then Black saved more than 100 people. This was an almost unimaginable number at that time because people never thought that Black would be so strong. For many years he had been standing behind the boss like a shadow. When the boss was gone, people found that this shadow was really the boss's shadow, and had almost the same level of tyrannical strength as the boss. Similarly, people never thought that Black could be so cruel and merciless. In order to save more than 100 people, he chose to sacrifice the same number of people, including several companions who were close to him. At this point, people realized why Black had such a powerful strength, but had been following behind the boss for many years and was willing to be a shadow. It was indeed difficult for such a person to stand on the stage like a boss. However, after a bloody scene, no one could blame him. Black did not really care. He considered himself a sinner. On one hand, he admitted that he was guilty, and on the other hand, he was already used to being a sinner. That's all for the story. Please go back. At this point, Xian Mo suddenly realized that he had said too much. He felt a little tired and directly asked him to leave. However, Wang Lu didn't care about the other party's order to leave. He smiled and said, "Have some tea before you leave." As he said that, he raised the teacup in his hand, which was still half full. Xian Mo looked at Wang Lu. This guy is really shameless. I've been telling a story for almost an hour, and he can't even finish half a cup of tea? I have a question. Wang Lu took a sip of tea. After your boss died, who was responsible? Xian Mo said, no one is responsible. At that time there were 3 deputies under the boss. 2 of them have been sacrificed, and Bai Zhe is not suitable to be the leader. The other one is Black, but I've just told you about his situation. Wang Lu asked, what about you? Xian Mo smiled bitterly. Me? I'm just temporarily pushed out. I don't have the power of a leader, so it's meaningless for you to come to me this time. I don't have the final say. Wang Lu nodded. I understand. It's a pity that you're not a mascot. So this time, I'm not looking for you to discuss business but to chat. Xian Mo smiled helplessly. Do you think it's appropriate to chat with me at this time? Wang Lu smiled and said, there's nothing inappropriate about it. Friendship comes first, competition comes second. Our 2 families will have a cooperative relationship in the future. It's not bad to establish a revolutionary friendship in advance. When Xian Mo was about to speak, he saw Wang Wu who was on the side spoke. Well, I think you 2 are a perfect match. It's necessary to establish a deep and thorough friendship with each other. As she spoke, she drank another cup of tea. Wang Wu was not as slow as Wang Lu. She drank half a cup of tea in half an hour. During this time she had drunk 5 cups of tea, and all of them were refilled by herself. After listening to Wang Wu's words, Xian Mo only felt that the meaning behind the words seemed to be quite vulgar. But to be honest, she didn't quite understand it, so she simply ignored her and focused on talking to Wang Lu. What do you want to know? Wang Lu said, a few questions. First, You united the elites of 9 regions to establish the Dixian organization and chose a heaven-defying opponent. It's reasonable to say that the organizational structure should be quite perfect. That's right, said Xianemo, although our individual strength is weak, we still have the power to fight if we join forces. This is thanks to the strength of our organization. Wang Lu asked, then here's the problem. For any organization, stability is its basic. It can't be that there's no successor when someone dies. When your boss was alive, there should be a successor, right? It shouldn't be black, right? Xianemo sighed and said, the Dixian organization was almost built by the boss alone, so only his prestige can overwhelm everyone. The others are too far behind. Even if the boss decides on a successor, it's useless. Of course, the boss did designate a few people. If he encounters an accident, those people will take over his work. But, Wang Lu asked, those successors are all dead? What a coincidence. Xianemo heard that this was a conspiracy theory, so he explained, under the sudden change, the organization was almost completely disintegrated and destroyed. The attack of the fallen immortals was very targeted. The first batch of people who died were almost the backbone of the organization. It's not easy for us to survive. At present, Black is the strongest and has the highest prestige, but he is unwilling to stand out. Moreover, there are many companions who have scruples about him. Wang Lu asked, since there are scruples, why would anyone listen to him? Xianemo knew that this was another question about the previous killing, so he explained, because before the boss died, he said to trust Black. Wang Lu asked, but he didn't pass on the position to him? There's no way, and Black won't accept it. He only makes a move when necessary. Only in this way can we really trust him. Wang Lu pondered and said, this internal disagreement is so big that it can't be any more. Is that why your Dixian organization has become so loose now? We were going to sleep forever. This resuscitation was an accident. No one knows what to do. Xianemo said, to be honest, I've been thinking about what it would be like if we didn't wake up. Would it be better for 9 regions? After all, we are already people of the past. Wang Lu was a little surprised. Your position is a bit strange. It seems to be somewhat inconsistent with the mainstream of Dixian. Wang Wu almost choked on her tea. She quickly reached out and poked Wang Lu's back and whispered, it looks like there's a chance. Try to win it and win glory for the country. Xianemo looked at Wang Lu and smiled helplessly. Don't go out and talk nonsense. These words should only be said when we are chatting. Wang Lu said, rest assured. If this kind of words were said, we would have one less ally to break into the enemy's territory. Xianemo smiled bitterly. He actually became an ally of the Wanxian League? No wonder his companions have been looking at him strangely recently. In short, you have heard the story you want to hear. If there's nothing else, Wang Lu quickly waved his hand. Yes, why not? One last question. Xianemo cheered up. Say it. Wang Lu was silent for a while, then asked with a smile, I think there is no future in Dixian. Do you want to come with us? The treatment will be good. Half an hour later, in the courtyard of the Immortal 5 area, Wang Lu returned to his workstation, but he was not in the mood to work. He concentrated on sighing. Hai Yunfan, the secretary, was still outside at this time, completing the formalities for Wang Lu. There were only him and Wang Wu in the room. Wang Wu held the teacup that she took from Xianemo and drank the immortal tea that was still fragrant even after more than 10 refills. She said leisurely, you are a retard. Wang Lu sneered twice and put on a posture of preparing to fight back. But when the words were on the tip of his tongue, he felt bored and simply did not talk to Wang Wu. Don't be unconvinced if I say you're a retard. I've never seen you ask someone out like that. Originally, she showed her intention, but she was scared by your arrogant posture. It seems that there's no hope. Wang Lu sneered and said, it's clearly you, bitch, who pulled down the average of the Wanxian League, which made her worry. Wang Wu snorted, took a sip of tea and then said, I think there's something going on with Dixian. Wang Lu also nodded and said, there's something wrong with Dixian. The situation is quite different from what I thought before. This trip is not in vain. The first problem person is Black. Wang Lu agreed, there's no one else but him. I think this person is very scheming and is by no means a good person. With that, he frowned with regret and said, it's a pity that Xianemo refused to say more about the details at the beginning. For example, what exactly happened in the surprise attack of the fallen immortals that caused heavy casualties? Wang Wu said, there's no need to ask, there must be a traitor inside. I think Black and Bai Zhe are the biggest suspects. It's better to find a way to capture these 2 people and interrogate them, and then behead them on behalf of Dixian and 9 regions. Of course, this inference was purely subjective and unreasonable. In the process of resisting the crisis of the fallen immortals, Dixian was completely walking on the edge of a cliff. It was not surprising that he would slip and fall at any time. There were many talented people in Dixian, but the fallen immortals would only be stronger. The organizational structure that they were proud of might be full of flaws in the eyes of the other party. Of course, Wang Lu and Wang Wu also knew this truth. But the problem was that there might be many reasons for one thing. Before there was further evidence to prove any of the reasons, it was not wrong to choose any one of them. Then it's settled. The black and white double spirits in Dixian camp colluded with foreign countries, which is an unforgivable crime. Our next step is to find a way to bring them down in Dixian camp, thereby reducing the difficulty of the grand competition. Wang Lu finally stated the fundamental purpose very honestly. Wang Wu nodded and said, "Good idea, I support you." Then she got up and left. Wang Lu asked, "Where are you going?" "Of course I'm going to slack off. In any case, I've been working with you for so long. Senior brother sect leader has nothing to say, haha." Chapter 697. It seems that we don't have to worry too much about the Soul Formation Stage team battle. When Hai Yunfan returned to the office with a thick pile of materials, he saw Wang Lu, who had a well-thought-out plan. "What do you mean?" Hai Yunfan asked, enduring his exhaustion. "They are not of one mind." Wang Lu was concise. "It's fine if it's a one-on-one battle, but no one will kill them in a team battle." Hai Yunfan wanted to ask how he knew, but considering that Wang Lu had just gone to Dishan's house, he might have some confidential information, so he didn't ask any more. Moreover, it was definitely a good thing that Dixian people were not of one mind. It could effectively reduce the intensity of work in the future. Overtime like the recent one should be avoided as much as possible. Thinking of this, Hai Yunfan was slightly relieved. "So, the compensation plan can be postponed?" Wang Lu thought for a moment. "Be prepared for both sides. Make one first." Hai Yunfan sighed. This was the disgusting part of being a secretary. With just a thought from the leader, the subordinates would have to run all over the place. But of course he couldn't be the only one to suffer. Hai Yunfan nodded and took over the work given by Wang Lu. He turned his head and asked, "Then what about your plan for the team battle?" "The situation has changed. Do you have to make a new plan?" Wang Lu thought for a moment. "Pick up the previous one and look at it again." Hai Yunfan said, "You burned it yourself?" Wang Lu said, "I know, so please make a new one for me. Anyway, you participated in the previous one, so you should be able to do it, right?" Hai Yunfan wanted to vomit blood. "Of course I can do it, but how many things do I have on hand right now?" Wang Lu thought for a moment. "Why don't you call your wife to work overtime together? It'll be good to relieve your lovesickness. Some hardships are enough for me. I won't drag Fei with me. You really have no sense of loyalty." Wang Lu looked at Hai Yunfan with disdain. "Husband and wife can't go through thick and thin together. You're going to cheat." Hai Yunfan held it in for a long time. "If you keep talking nonsense, I'll take sick leave." Wang Lu shook his head. "Forget it, let's not talk nonsense. Work. Then he buried his head in sorting out the battle plan. A day later, the proposal was released and sent to all relevant personnel. The group battle between deity transformation stage experts was the focus of everyone's attention. Everyone attached great importance to it, and at the same time they were also very nervous. Several deity transformation stage perfected masters who participated in the competition had all secluded themselves after receiving the plan, even though there was only a short period of time before the actual competition began. The only one who could be considered relaxed was Feng Yin Taoist Master. The leader of the team of divinity transformation stage cultivators was neither training in seclusion nor preparing for the upcoming battle. Instead, he was living and training as usual. Right now, he also held a position in the organizing committee of the grand competition, but most of his time was spent on Spirit Sword Mountain, sometimes stargazing, sometimes practicing swordsmanship. He appeared to be relaxed, which made Wang Wu, who occasionally returned to the mountain, scold the old thing for having a double standard, being harsh to others but indulging himself. Feng Yin Taoist Master really didn't care much about this group battle. Because long before Wang Lu made his judgment, he had judged through the stellar diffraction technique that this battle would be more daunting than dangerous, so there was no need to be as nervous as the outside world. Of course, the result of the stellar diffraction technique was not absolutely correct. Therefore, Feng Yin did not disclose it to outsiders. He just sat alone on the stellar peak, smiling at the rolling mortal world at the foot of the mountain. His jade mansion and immortal heart reflected the mortal world and became more refined and condensed. Feng Yin narrowed his eyes. The world under the mountain was divided into countless lines in front of his eyes, which extended infinitely into the distance. Feng Yin tried to make his heart calmer so that he could see it more clearly. However, at this time, a ripple set off behind him, which disturbed the calm lake of his heart. Senior brother sect leader, you're in a good mood, aren't you? You're actually playing at the top of the mountain. Feng Yin's mood suddenly turned bad. How come you're here? Didn't I ask you to help Wang Lu? Wang Wu spread out her hands. I came to help him find you. Feng Yin was also surprised. He didn't expect that this guy was actually doing something serious. What do you want from me? Wang Wu said, let me think about it. Feng Yin took back his words, and at the same time, his mood became even worse. By the way, I want to ask, how are your preparations going? Feng Yin said, this battle should be fine. Wang Wu said, it's better to be safe than sorry. Have you ever thought about what to do after? Feng Yin said, is this what Wang Lu asked you to ask? Wang Wu said, this is what I came up with my subjective initiative. Don't interrupt me, answer me first. In case you die on the battlefield, who will be the sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect? Although Wang Lu is the proper successor to the lead disciple, his age is too young and his cultivation base is too low. How about I be wrong to be the sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect? Feng Yin chuckled twice. Get lost. Yo, sect leader senior brother, you'd get lost word sounds weak, which is really worrying. Why don't you take a good rest for a few days and let me temporarily take over the position of sect leader? Feng Yin said, you don't want the offering anymore? Wang Wu sneered. Senior brother, you're doing this again. Have you forgotten what my identity is now? Why would I care about those hundreds of spirit stones? Feng Yin said, hundreds of spirit stones? Your tribute for this period is 5 million. Wang Wu was shocked. Senior brother, you've really gone crazy and lost your mind. When did I have 5 million offerings? How much is the annual financial income of our Lingjian school? Didn't you win a key game in the grand competition? Later on, Wang Lu used this as a reason to grant you a bonus of 5 million, 1,000 gold to buy a horse's bones. Wang Wu was dumbfounded. When did that happen? How come I don't know about it? Moreover, since it's my bonus, how could it run into your hands and become the sect's offering? Feng Yin said, Wang Lu directly gave it to the sect, so of course it's in my hands. Other people won't want this spirit stone, so in the end, it must be given to you. But if you insist on neglecting your duty, then I have to confiscate that spirit stone. Absolutely not. Wang Wu hurriedly stopped him and then gritted her teeth. This dirty trick must be done by Wang Lu. I suggest disqualifying him as the lead disciple. Feng Yin said. What are you doing here? Wang Wu was silent for a moment, and then said with a smile, can't I come to see you? Feng Yin scolded, get out of here, don't give me trouble. After sending away Wang Wu, this god of plague, Feng Yin finally breathed a sigh of relief, but a smile slowly appeared on his face. This idiot was still as stupid as before. When her big brother was still alive, she was not good at expressing herself. Every day she was like a puppet, cultivating and cultivating. After her big brother's death, her temperament changed greatly. She looked warm and cheerful, but in fact she was still not good at expressing herself. Just now she clearly came to see him. After all, the deity stage group battle was imminent, and no one dared to say that they had full confidence. However, Wang Wu's way of visiting people was quite special, which was really hateful. After lamenting Wang Wu, Feng Yin was not annoyed, but it was difficult to restore his previous tranquility. In front of him, the fine lines leading to the infinite depths had become tangled with each other, and his stellar diffraction technique could no longer see the future. If he couldn't see it clearly, he would stop looking. Feng Yin's dependence on the stellar diffraction technique had become less and less, and he was no longer so sure about the result. Moreover, in this deity stage group battle, whether there was a stellar diffraction technique or not, he firmly believed that it would be a daunting experience without any mishap. Because after all, he was going to do it himself, so how could he fail? In Lingjian school, those who were good at cross-level challenges were not only the two on non-phase peak. In the Western continent, Feng Yin had shown his edge, so no one would really regard him as an ordinary peak deity stage cultivator. However, above deity stage, how much leeway did he have? Measured by the standard of supreme level, was he at the top level alongside he two and the others, or was he one level lower or 2 levels lower? Even Wang Lu was not clear about these things. Of course, it was also because he didn't want to know too much. The elders of Lingjian school were seriously his junior brothers and sisters, and their relationship was delicate. In the past 100 years, from a good point of view, he sacrificed himself to buy time for Lingjian school. However, from another point of view, The most difficult 100 years of Lingjian school was because his junior brothers and sisters were self-reliant without him, supporting the school from scratch. Therefore, so far, the strength of Feng Yin Taoist master was quite mysterious. When Wang Lu made the plan, he only conservatively labeled Feng Yin as peak deity stage plus 10, which tacitly agreed that he was equivalent to an upper-middle level supreme cultivator. However, other people didn't know the actual situation, but how could Feng Yin himself not know? It's just, why do I start to feel a little uneasy in my heart? When Feng Yin returned to the bamboo room, he did not deliberately pursue the calm lake of his heart. It was just that, after being visited by Wang Wu, he always felt that something was wrong. He took out the Kunlun mirror and looked at the future again. The countless lines became more chaotic, and the place where the lines condensed seemed to be pregnant with ominous signs. It was just strange that this ominous sign did not point to him. No matter how vague and biased the stellar diffraction technique was, it should be able to predict his own good or bad luck. Could it be that in this deity stage group fight he could be safe and sound, but others might encounter misfortune? Thinking of this, Feng Yin picked up the pen and wrote a letter to Wang Lu in the City of Immortals. Hey, there's an ominous sign ahead? What is sect leader Reverend doing this time? In the courtyard of Immortal 5 area, Wang Lu soon received an urgent flying sword message from Spirit Sword Mountain. Looking at Feng Yin Taoist master's detailed description of what he saw and felt in his heart, Wang Lu was puzzled. According to Wang Lu's current information in this deity stage group fight, at most, they would lose the competition. Of course, this was also quite serious. However, the meaning of Feng Yin's letter seemed to be that the result of this group fight was worse than losing. This made Wang Lu entangled. Not long ago he had just inquired about the information from Shanimo, which probably said that there should be no danger in this battle. However, in the blink of an eye, Feng Yin Taoist master came to slap his face. However, Wang Lu still couldn't ignore it. Feng Yin was a very stable person. Although sometimes he didn't pay attention to the details, he was mostly reliable in big things. Otherwise, he would not have appointed him to take over the Lingjian school. Therefore, when Feng Yin wrote such a solemn letter, he had to pay attention to it. The question was, how should he pay attention to it? Holding the sincerity paper in his hand, Wang Lu became more and more confused. Chapter 698. In the central arena of Immortal 1 area, the noise was deafening. As soon as one entered the arena, one could feel the resonance of the rolling sound waves, which made all the hairs on one's body stand up. A wave of heat made people blush and sweat appeared on their foreheads. This place was guarded by the Tranquility Array and had a constant and pleasant temperature. At this time, it was ignited by the enthusiasm of millions of spectators, as if a flame was burning, which made people unable to help but melt in it, laughing and shouting loudly with the people around them. Even though the contestants had not yet entered the arena, the atmosphere in the arena had already heated up. Because admission to the grand competition was not by ticket, and the good seats were first come, first served, many people came here long in advance to wait. In any case, for cultivators who were accustomed to secluded cultivation and had a long life, waiting for 3 to 5 days was nothing. At this time, the competition was about to begin, and the few days of boring waiting seemed to be worth it. After an hour of noise, the atmosphere in the audience only increased. Many people who came later could not find a seat, so they would rather stand. Later on, they could not stand, and the arena did not allow flying swords to float, so they had to show their magical abilities. Some people with higher cultivation base wanted to use the spatial technique of mustard seed to open up their immortal's cave. As a result, as soon as they made their move, they were bounced out by the array in the arena and returned resentfully. Some clever ones came up with a way to directly use the transformation technique to turn themselves into something like a fly or a mosquito. Suddenly they felt that the space inside the arena was really vast. Of course, although this kind of insignificant skill could solve the problem, it was really not good enough. As cultivators, most of them were people with prestige. Most of them could not bear to be so vicious to themselves, so they could only sigh. Just as everyone was displaying their abilities, a few people finally walked onto the empty rostrum. It immediately attracted the attention of countless people. They were the senior leaders of the Wanxian League, He Tu, Kuqin, Zhuri, Tianluan. Feng Yin did not attend because he would go on stage in a while, so there was no need to go to the rostrum. In addition to the leaders of the 4 major sects, the rest of the high-level leaders followed. Among this group of people, the figure of Wang Lu was particularly eye-catching. With his King Pill stage, Wang Lu was ranked among the many supreme cultivators. He was truly a strange flower in 9 regions. However, this strange flower was very popular. After he appeared, the cheers from the audience were like a huge wave, which was even louder than when he too and the others appeared. Wang Lu waved at the crowd in a very straightforward manner. His gaze lingered on many of the hot girls for a while longer. Then, seeing that Wang Wu was about to walk over, he sat down at ease and looked at the scene without looking sideways. At the same time, someone finally arrived at the venue, attracting the attention of the audience. They were the few cultivators at the peak of the soul formation stage in this competition. Including the main team and the substitutes, there were a total of 10 of them, led by Feng Yin. Just as the audience was about to welcome them in with the warmest applause and cheer for them, a thunderous sound suddenly exploded in the audience. The Wuxia League's immortal arts are boundless, unifying the three realms. Feng Yin Taoist Master is invincible. Suppress the entire universe. The Fengtian generals are invincible and invincible. Fairy Lingyin has great magical power and shakes the group of immortals. These shouts made the millions of audience outside the venue change their countenance. What the hell is this? From Feng Yin Taoist Master to the substitute Taoist priest White Bone, everyone had a thunderous slogan. Just whispering it could make people's hair stand on end, let alone when it was shouted in unison from all directions. It was simply like 100 claws scratching one's heart and making one's blood flow backward. When everyone was feeling like they were better off dead, the sound of encouragement became louder and louder, shaking the whole venue slightly and making people's hearts flutter in the wind and rain. In a moment, the audience began to leave the auditorium. At first, it was a little bit, but then it was like a landslide or a tsunami. Like a dam collapsing, a large number of audience fled from the auditorium, leaving a lot of empty seats. Many of the experts on the rostrum also looked very unnatural. After exchanging a few words with each other, they turned their eyes to Wang Lu. Obviously this was the work of Wang Lu. Wang Lu looked a little proud. What do you think, elders? These are the cheerleaders specially hired for this team fight. Aren't they full and powerful? The red-robed old ancestor, who had a close relationship with Wang Lu, coughed and looked at the auditorium that was 1/5 empty in an instant. He then asked Wang Lu, "Where did you find these weirdos?" Wang Lu excitedly said, "There's a place called the Sea of Constellations. I wonder if Ancestor has heard of it? Although the strength of the cultivators over there is mediocre, they're really good at bragging. When I went there, the current sect leader personally performed a bragging performance for me. It was a gorgeous mess. If Ancestor needs it, I can ask them to write one for you." The red-robed old ancestor repeatedly waved his hand. "No need, I can't afford to lose this old face of mine. It's a pity. I've already asked them to prepare the lyrics for Supreme Hichu, Supreme Kuchin and the others." Hearing this, the cultivators of Xingjing sect and Royal Soldier sect were obviously a little uncomfortable. Fortunately, the sect leader was shrewd enough to keep his composure. While Wang Lu and the red-robed old ancestor were talking, the cheerleaders of the Sea of Constellations finally began to quiet down. Because the people on the opposite side had also begun to enter the arena, no matter how good the people of the Sea of Constellations were at bragging, they wouldn't be able to brag to the opposite side. Thus, they all sat back in their original positions to rest. However, before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, they saw the cultivators of the Sea of Constellations take out all kinds of throat care pills. The colorful medicine bottles were very beautiful. A moment later, there was also a pot of jade pear ice soup. The color was amber and it was sweet and pleasant. The cultivators took the medicine and drank the soup, contentedly beginning to care for their throats. These cultivators had no other strong points, but they had reached the pinnacle of this crooked way. At this time, in order to conserve their energy for the next match, they showed a very strong professional quality. In addition to the medicine soup, they also set up the purifying stainless array to purify the air. They also took out a pot of dew flower branches, which overflowed with a dense mist. As soon as the surrounding people smelled it, they felt a clear and cold sensation in their throats, which was indescribably comfortable. The Sea of Constellations was a remote corner of the 9 regions, and the cultivators here were often regarded as natives. The strongest cultivator in the sect was only a Yuanying stage cultivator, and it was still a weak Yuanying -3 or -4, which was really not good enough to be seen in public. Today they were specially invited by Wang Lu to shine in front of the tens of thousands of people. These cultivators were highly excited. They rubbed their palms and from time to time, murmuring sounds came from their throats, which made the spectators sitting nearby feel terrified. Not long after, the match officially began. The cultivators of the Sea of Constellations kept their soldiers for 1,000 days, fully displaying the results of their maintenance. Feng Yin Taoist Master, domineering in the universe, unparalleled in the world. For this match, the Wuxia League gave everything they had. Everyone knew that the odds of winning were slim, so they would do anything that could increase their odds of winning, even if it seemed ridiculous. For example, the cheerleaders from the Sea of Constellations, the mysterious porcelain bottle contributed by the Kunlun Immortal Mountain before the match, the enthusiastic and cheerful human furnace team provided by the Yin and Yang sect, and the exotic delicacies offered by their friends from the western continent who had the bloodline of the dragon race. According to Wang Lu, if they lost the match, they would have to eat the exotic delicacies until they were full. At the same time, the Wanxian League was prepared to pay a heavy price. Although Wang Lu had communicated with Xian Mo in advance, and theoretically, there shouldn't be any heavy casualties, the battlefield was ever-changing. Who could guarantee that there wouldn't be any accidents? Therefore, at the beginning of the match, the eyes of countless cultivators in the audience gathered on the field, nervously praying for the people on the field. In people's expectation, there were only the following situations that might happen. The union of 10,000 immortals whose individual strength and team cooperation were lagging behind, would be easily crushed by the Earth Immortals, and Wang Lu's battle plan would be difficult to reverse. Or, in the case of falling behind in strength, the cultivators would struggle to hold on, and finally rely on an unexpected point to turn the tables at the critical moment, narrowly winning the match. Or they would take advantage of Feng Yin Taoist Master's tyrannical strength to constantly move around, looking for opportunities to provoke the rhythm, and finally win the match. But no matter what the possibility was, the Wanxian League would face a very difficult situation. After all, the gap in strength was obvious. However, after 2 hours the audience was almost silent. People looked at everything that happened in the field in disbelief. They were tongue-tied and waves of emotions surged in their hearts. The feeling was indescribable. In the field, 5 cultivators stood on the Milky Way sword array, and their immortal spells were like a storm, suppressing their opponents in the corner of the stone forest. Of the 5 opponents, only 3 were left, and they barely formed a 3 talents formation, struggling under the fierce attacks. Such a situation was actually perfectly in line with the initial expectations of many people. Because of the gap in strength, 1 or 2 people were killed in seconds, and the remaining 3 people tried their best to protect themselves, struggling at death's door, and then they were defeated miserably after a cup of tea's time. But no one expected that the one being suppressed in the corner was not the Wanxian League's team, but Dixian, Swanxian Shenemo Baize. They were suppressed by the storm-like spells, and from time to time, they had to deal with Feng Yin Taoist Master's starry immortal sword. The scene was unspeakable. And not far in front of the 3 of them, there were Shuero 2 and Mirage Boy's bodies, which were split into 2. The bodies were real bodies, corpses that couldn't be resurrected. Even if the Dixian had great supernatural powers, they would still die, and after death they would become corpses, and this was the scene in front of them. Shuero 2 and Mirage Boy, these 2 were also well-known figures in the Dixian camp. Mirage Boy once fought with Wang Wu, and although he was defeated, he showed his amazing attainments in illusions. In the battle between Shuero 2 and Zhu Shiyao, although he was beaten by a sword, he still won by a narrow margin. These 2 were undoubtedly strong in the Dixian camp, and even the most optimistic people would not have predicted their deaths before the start of the competition. But they died just like that. Less than half an hour after the start of the battle, the lone Shuero 2 was successfully attacked by Feng Yin. The starry immortal sword bypassed the human skin apron and went straight for Shuero 2's vital point, nailing Shuero 2's primordial spirit. Shuero 2 was seriously injured and fled. Feng Yin's heart was moved and he wanted to show mercy, but the Feng Tian generals from the royal soldier sect were merciless. With one chop of his axe, Shuero 2 died. At that time, when the Feng Tian generals found out that Shuero 2 was really dead and couldn't be resurrected, they were very surprised and touched their head with their bloody hands. Why is this son of a bitch so weak? After the death of Shuero 2, Feng Yin Taoist Master did the same thing and severely injured Mirage Boy. This Dixian with perfect illusions for some reason actually revealed a flaw in the illusion protection array, and his primordial spirit was also nailed. Then the Feng Tian generals finished with one chop of the axe. Finally, looking at the 2 halves of the corpse, they were puzzled. Did they do it on purpose? Chapter 699. No one would deliberately die, especially these cultivators who had experienced the battle of the fallen immortals. They should be more able to realize the preciousness of life and should do everything possible to prolong their lives instead of courting death themselves. However, if they didn't court death themselves, it was difficult for people to understand why Shuero 2 and Mirage Boy would die like this. The deaths of the 2 were almost the same. First they were alone, then they were ambushed by Feng Yin. After being seriously injured and unable to struggle, they were finally killed by the Fengtian general's axe. There were 3 unreasonable points in this process. First, why were they alone? The rule of the 5-person team battle was to put the 2 teams in a vast space, and then look for each other and fight. This kind of battle should have been more advantageous for Dixian, who had a tacit understanding and rich combat experience. They could allocate their forces more appropriately and choose the right people to investigate, set up ambushes, harvest, and so on. However, the result was that Shuero 2 and Mirage Boy did not respond to the main force at all. Soon after the battle started, they parted ways with the other 3 and played their own game. This simply gave people a chance to break them one by one. Otherwise, with the 5 of Dixian in a group, how could Feng Yin find a chance to sneak attack? As soon as the Stellar Immortal Sword was used, it would be blocked by the negation seal. What's more, it stood to reason that with Xuan Xian present, Feng Yin's stellar diffraction technique would be severely interfered with, and there was almost no possibility of a successful ambush. However, it was obvious that Xuan Xian did not care about the 2 people at all during the battle, allowing them to be schemed against by Feng Yin. Secondly, after Shuero 2 and Mirage Boy were ambushed, they fell too quickly. After being ambushed by Feng Yin, it was inevitable that the 2 of them could not fight. No matter how fierce Dixian was after being ambushed, it was absolutely impossible for him to fight against 5 people alone. But even if he could not win, he should at least be able to hold on for a while. Based on the strength that Feng Yin Taoist Master had displayed, he should be able to hold on for a while under the encirclement of the 5. Shuero 2 and the Mirage Boy were not as good as Feng Yin, a Master Divinity Transformation Stage cultivator, could they? But in reality their performance was indeed inferior. After their defense was broken by Feng Yin's sword, their primordial spirits were exposed without any defense. Then, with another sword, their primordial spirits were nailed to death, and they had no ability to resist. In the end, when the Fengtian general's sky-splitting axe came down, they didn't even have time to react before they were hit. Was this how a Dixian should behave? Apart from these 2, the performance of the other 3 was also far below expectations. Xuan Xian was known as the calculator of lives, but in a match with a total of 10 people, he could not calculate anything. He could not calculate that Shuero 2 and the Mirage Boy would die. He could not calculate that without the 2 of them, the 3 of them would not be able to fight against the opponent. He could not even calculate that if it were not for Feng Yin's mercy, the big axe in the hands of the Fengtian generals would have been stained with the blood of more corpses. Bai Zhe also did not have much of a state. Before the battle started, he was like a dead man, allowing the 2 people to leave the team without any persuasion. It was as if he was sleepwalking in the team of 3. After the battle started, he was injured by Feng Yin, but he did raise his spirits. He repeatedly used the negation seal, but it was disorderly and seemed absent-minded. He did not have the demeanor that a Dixian should have. Xian Mo was the only one who tried her best, but no matter how strong she was, it was impossible for her to fight against 5 people alone. Moreover, it was obvious that she was very dissatisfied with the situation of the team. With 2 rookies by her side, she could not fight with all her energy. And then, the result was what it was now. The team of 5 had lost 2 people, and the remaining 3 had lost their will to fight. At this point, the outcome of this team battle could be said to have been decided. The Wanxian League had won a great victory. However, when people saw this scene while they rejoiced, they found it even more unbelievable and inconceivable. What? Of course, winning was a good thing, but there must always be a reason. This kind of unknown victory was really frightening. Therefore, even if they had an overwhelming advantage in the situation, people would still worry if this was a conspiracy. They would worry if the 2 corpses of the 2 people would suddenly come back to life. They would worry that Bai Zhe, Xian Mo, and Xuan Xian would have some powerful trump card that was about to be revealed. In the audience stand, millions of people watched the Wanxian League's advantage continue to accumulate. Feng Yin Taoist Master, Fengtian Generals, Fairy Bell Sound, Scarlet Thunder, Taoist White Bone. They flew around the field like flowers. From time to time they set off a bloody light, leaving terrible wounds on the body of the Dixian side. Finally, when Xuan Xian's 17th attempt to interrupt Feng Yin's flying sword failed, he sighed helplessly and said, "I admit defeat." Thus, at the end of the match, the Wanxian League won a great victory. They replaced 2 of the opponent's generals with 0 casualties, and also won more than 1,500 points in the grand competition. In one fell swoop, the difference between the 2 camps was reduced to less than 1,000 points. At this point, the tsunami-like cheers from the audience finally overflowed. They had really won this match. The victory in the deity stage team fight was a great joy. The Wanxian League once again fell into a carnival that lasted for many days. Many cultivators who had nothing to do with the match were almost crazy with joy. After the news of the victory of the match came out, there were immediately local tycoons who scattered money in the streets of Area A and B. The sky was like a rain of spirit stones, which injured countless civilians. Outside the major casinos, there were people who laughed crazily and suffocated. Some people jumped down from a height of dozens of meters on the spot and then cut their own throats while falling. The major restaurants were bustling with customers, and they needed to urgently transfer the stock of spirits to meet the needs of the guests. The streets and alleys were full of drunkards lying on the ground. The authorized products related to several Taoist masters of deity stage in the shops were swept away. All the rooms in the inn were full, and the sound of hum and ah rose and fell in the rooms like a symphony ceremony. Even the sound-canceling array in the room could not stop it. This day was the carnival day of the Wanxian League. Many men and women who did not know each other just because they shouted the victory slogan at the same time or supported the same Taoist master of deity stage, could hug each other intimately, and then go to the inn hand in hand to spend the joy of intimacy. After the clouds and rain stopped, they would go their separate ways. Seeing this scene, the elders of Kunlun Immortal Mountain repeatedly shouted that the moral degeneration of the world was getting worse and worse. After the grand competition was over, they would use the immortal treasure in the tomb to reshape the moral code of 9 regions. On the other hand, Four Element Supreme of Four Element Sect was overjoyed. He repeatedly praised that the reproduction plan of 9 regions was within reach. He wished the contestants in the arena a winning streak and provided more mating and reproduction opportunities for the audience. In any case, most people were extremely happy with this victory, but there were always a few exceptions in the general context. Wang Lu was one of them. This victory is too strange. Until now we still can't figure out how we won. So I think it's no different from losing. In the courtyard of Immortal 5 area, Wang Lu said to his secretary Hai Yunfan with a straight face, "Since we lost, there's no need to give the victory subsidy. Of course, during this period of time, everyone has worked hard to prepare for the competition, so the subsidy that should be given should still be given. However, for some people who didn't work hard, just forget about it." Hai Yunfan smiled and said, "For example, there's no need to give your master's share, right?" Wang Lu nodded and said, "You're a promising student?" "Promising your ass. I'm still here." Wang Wu angrily slapped the table and said, "You guys think I don't exist? And who told you that I didn't work hard? If it weren't for me, how could they win so easily?" Wang Lu immediately asked, "Please explain in detail, do you have any connection with this victory? I am your master, and you are the chief planner of this competition. Is this connection close enough?" Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, "Have I not severed the relationship between you and me? Do you have to be so fierce? All right, what do you want me to do? Just say it. Don't make fun of a sensitive topic like the subsidy." Wang Lu then seriously said, "There is indeed one thing that I want to ask you to accompany me to the group of immortal tombs again. I also want to talk to Xianemo." Wang Wu was taken aback. "You still want to look for Xianemo? Do you really not want to give up until you kill her? Look for her before the competition. Look for her again after the competition. Pay attention to the melon field. It's rare for her to be close to us in the Dixian camp. It's not good for anyone to force her into a corner." After a pause, Wang Wu showed an even more surprised expression. "Or do you really have a relationship with that girl? Not bad, little Wang Lu, you've unknowingly grown up and began to look for a woman. Xianemo is a good girl, remember to call me when you're tired of playing with her." Wang Lu sighed and directly ignored his master's nonsense. "I still don't understand what's going on in that competition. The Dixian team's loss is too strange." Wang Wu sneered. "What's strange about it? It's clear that the Dixian team doesn't want to win and gave up the victory. Anyone who has seen that scene would understand. The problem is, why did they give up the victory? The score of this competition is as high as 1,500, it's not something that can be easily given up. Moreover, what about Shuero 2 and Mirage Boy? They even gave up their lives?" Wang Wu said, "Isn't it obvious? They offended someone and were pushed out as a target." Wang Lu said, "Shuero 2 and Bai Zhe, those 2 slaughtering demons can be ignored, but Shenmo's temper also offended people?" Wang Wu said, "It's probably because he's pregnant with your flesh and blood, so he's regarded as an impure person." Wang Lu said, "Let's not talk about anything else. This group of Dixian team members are comrades who fought against the fallen immortals together. They have gone through life and death together. What kind of contradiction would make them kill people with a borrowed knife in this kind of competition? In the end, the grand competition is just a competition. So what if the Dixian team lost? It's nothing more than losing the initiative of the next step and the people are still the same. Or it's because the victory of this competition is not so important that their own lives and team harmony are more important. Now they don't even care about the overall situation. To what extent has the internal contradiction accumulated? Listening to Wang Lu's words, Hai Yunfan interrupted, "These are all your assumptions, right? Do you have anything to support it?" Wang Lu said, "That's why I want to find Shen Mo and ask him about it. This matter involves the overall rhythm of the grand competition, so we must be careful. So, someone in the name of doing odd jobs here, you slack off every day and receive high subsidies. Shouldn't you do something serious once in a while?" Wang Wu sighed and said, "Very well, who told me to work hard? Just tell me the time, I'll accompany you to the dragon's pool and tiger's den." Chapter 700. Different from the last time he went to the whirlpool of stars to visit Shen Mo, this time Wang Lu was ready to fight. The last time they met, Wang Lu and Shen Mo had a good talk. That was because they both had a sense of propriety in the conversation and did not cross the line, so the atmosphere was harmonious. At the same time, Wang Lu's sudden departure did not inform anyone before that, so the Dixian side was also caught off guard. However, in the deity stage battle, Dixian lost 2 people and lost 1,500 points. As a contestant, Shen Mo's conversation with Wang Lu was really impossible to explain. According to the normal line of thought at this time, the Dixian camp would never allow Wang Lu to talk to Shen Mo in such a big way. However, Wang Lu had too many questions that had to be confirmed by Shen Mo, so the second meeting was imperative. And Wang Wu, as his bodyguard, was also duty-bound. It was not that there was no expert in the Wanxian League who could serve as a bodyguard, and the red-robed ancestor was one of the forces that could be borrowed. However, according to the formal process, it would take at least half a month to use a supreme-level expert. Therefore Wang Lu settled for the second best. Even if he could not afford a supreme-level expert, he could still make do with the number 1 king pill in 9 regions. In Wang Lu's view, even if the power of the number 1 king pill in 9 regions was not as good as that of a supreme, the difference would not be too big, because she inherited his legacy. If it were him, after experiencing the catastrophe in the savage land, 150 years was enough for him to become the top cultivator in the world. And even if Wang Wu was not as good as him, the gap would not be too big, because her perception and perseverance were really amazing, and the only thing that limited her to immortal cultivation was her spirit root. However, judging the future of immortal cultivation according to the grade of spirit root was just the old path of the predecessors. There were 3,000 great Daos in the world, so it was not necessary to hang on a single tree. If she had a way to circumvent the restrictions of the spiritual route, such as the outer path that she was walking now, then her future would be limitless. Right now, Wang Wu's strength was about the peak of the deification stage, but no one dared to say that this was her limit. Wang Lu also didn't think that this was her limit. He had full confidence in Wang Wu. Therefore he brought along his cheap and high-quality bodyguards and directly went to the heavenly earth of the Tomb of Immortals. However, to his surprise, the entire journey was safe and sound. No one came out to obstruct him, nor did he step on any sinister traps. The two of them smoothly met the master of the tavern Heaven on Earth, Dixian Shen Mo. It was still the same elegant hall. The Dixian woman sat quietly in the hall, slightly lost in thought. After seeing Wang Lu and Wang Chang, Shen Mo nodded and revealed a forced smile before ignoring them. Wang Lu was curious. Since the recovery of her schizophrenia, Shen Mo had always been well-educated and well-mannered. Now that the distinguished guests were here, how could she not even bring a few cups of tea? It was not until Wang Lu sat down on the futon in front of her and was ready to ask questions that Shen Mo woke up from her dream. She said in surprise, "You guys are here?" Wang Lu was convinced and said, "Your divine ability to look down on others has reached the immortal realm." Shen Mo apologetically smiled. "I was a bit distracted." Then she got up to serve tea to the guests. However, her posture was shaky and she staggered. A trace of redness slowly appeared on her cheeks, sparkling beads of sweat appeared on her forehead, and her eyes were blurred. After seeing this, Wang Lu was shocked and quickly asked Wang Wu, "Consult a professional's opinion. Look at her. Doesn't it look like she is enjoying some forbidden pleasure?" Wang Wu also thought deeply. "I didn't expect Dixian to be so forthright. She would look down on you in the daytime. I think you should seize the opportunity to have a deep conversation with her. It will help to promote the cooperation between our two sides." I think this precious opportunity should be left to the professionals. Your telepathic finger will definitely let her enjoy a different kind of pleasure. Telepathic finger is already a thing of the past. Now I am developing a new skill. You withdrew money from the public account to say that you want to open the secret weapon. Is it to develop this thing? As the two were whispering, they suddenly saw Xianemo stagger. Her body seemed to be unable to suppress it. A cloud of mist rose from the ground. In an instant, the vast hall was filled with the fragrance of wine. Wang Lu was dumbfounded. Did she drink too much just now? As he said this, his gaze turned to the praying mat that Xianemo was sitting on just now. He saw that the patterns on the praying mat were profound. Within the exquisite decorations, there was an ice heart calming formation. Only then did he understand that Xianemo was sitting on the praying mat to clear her mind and sober up. He didn't know how much celestial wine she had drunk. With Dixin's cultivation, he was actually unable to suppress the drunkenness on his own. He had to rely on external help. But now, in order to get up to welcome the guest, Xianemo had left the praying mat. Instantly, the drunkenness surged and her mind was in a mess. Her figure was even more dazed. However, a lazy smile appeared on her face. Why is my house spinning? As he spoke, Xianemo swayed her waist slightly. She stretched out her sleeves and started to spin. She started to dance gracefully while humming a light tune. But how could Dixin's dance be ordinary? With a wave of her hand, the wind and clouds surged in the main hall. The yin and yang qi were rolled up by her hands and formed a hurricane. All the simple furniture in the hall were swept up by the hurricane, spinning and tearing into pieces. Even the impregnable hall itself was trembling slightly. Cultivators like Dixien had reached the peak of the immortal path. Every movement of their hands or feet had great power. The hurricane in the hall was strong enough to blow away the primordial spirit of a nascent soul cultivator in an instant. Moreover, she used it in front of the two cultivators with the king pill. It was simply murder. Fortunately, the king pill was not an ordinary king pill. Wang Wu raised her hand and created a golden shield to protect the two of them. No matter how the outside wind and rain hit them, the shield remained motionless. After a while, the hurricane dissipated and Xianemo was no longer drunk. Seeing the mess in the hall, she shook her head and smiled bitterly. It's really ugly. Wang Lu nodded. It's indeed ugly. Xianemo was shocked. Why are you here? A moment later, Xianemo said apologetically, I was really confused just now, please forgive me. It's okay. Moreover, looking at your performance, I have confirmed a lot of conjectures which are of great significance. The fact that Xianemo was drunk to the point of being delirious was very significant in itself. In theory, she was not the kind of cultivator who indulged in debauchery. Her words and deeds were all in accordance with the law. Even if this kind of person drank, she would only take a sip and would rarely get drunk. Unless there was a special situation. For example, the deity stage team fight not long ago. Wang Lu went straight to the point. Did you guys have an internal strife? Xianemo smiled bitterly. Yes. The internal strife of the team should not be told to outsiders at will. However, after that bad team fight, the internal strife was something that could be guessed by those who were interested in it. It could not be concealed at all. Therefore Xianemo did not hide it. Wang Lu said with a smile, you guys were pushed aside, right? The several people who participated in the deity stage team fight actually had one thing in common when they thought about it. They were all losers in the grand competition. Xianemo lost to He Tu on purpose in the opening match. Xuan Xian was defeated by Supreme Tianluan. Although Shuero Tu narrowly defeated Zhu Shiyao, he was defeated by Zhou Ming in a Yuaning stage fight. Needless to say, Mirage Boy was played around by Wang Wu. As for Bai Zhe, he even lost his position as the deputy in the camp, which was already the shame of Dixian. These people were not weak, but their resumes were really unbearable. Putting these 5 people into a team was simply bad luck. However, it's a bit too much to squeeze out people's lives. Don't look at me, we don't want to kill people here. Who would have thought that your people are so weak that the dignified Dixian died faster than a rabbit? You are the person involved. Is it possible to say that there are no people on your side? I thought you guys should be brothers who share life and death together. How could you guys quickly turn against each other after just half a year of the grand competition? Xianemo looked at Wang Lu in a daze and was silent for a long time. Obviously he didn't want to say more. Wang Lu was also patient. Xianemo didn't speak, so he just wandered around the hall, rummaging through the ruins caused by the drunken hurricane for Dixin's legacy. He actually found several ancient books of methods that Xianemo read daily. Dixin's products were naturally fine. Wang Lu looked at them with relish and also copied a few copies, intending to sell them when he returned. Wang Wu was more direct. If she saw anything valuable in the ruins, she directly put it into her mustard seed bag without any hesitation. Xian Mo was stunned for a long time. Seeing that these two people were really good at turning the tables, he shook his head helplessly and said, "The situation is very bad." Wang Lu then stopped writing and asked, "What about the specifics? What is the root cause of the infighting?" After a pause he said, "In the final analysis, our two sides are not enemies. In the face of the threat of the fallen immortals, we should cooperate more than compete. Of course we want to win, but we don't want to win this game and lose the teammates that we should unite." Hearing this, Xian Mo sighed inwardly, put down some hesitation and said, "The group of dragons has no leader." "The group of dragons has no leader? You've said this before, but it shouldn't develop to the point of killing each other, right?" Xian Mo said, "I didn't expect things to be so serious. But in fact, when this team was first formed, in order to unite all the forces, the composition of Dixian was a bit complicated. As you can see, even the demon race is included, even the slaughtering demon. However, when the boss was there, these problems were not shown. In order to show the sincerity of the alliance, Bai Zhe even took the initiative to abandon his human form. He was the only Dixian who didn't have much killing but degenerated into a demon." Wang Lu was slightly surprised and said, "Unexpectedly, he has some redeeming qualities. When Bai Zhe was the deputy, he was always very competent. It was only after the boss left that he became at a loss. The same is true for the rest of us. When the boss left, most of his most loyal and reliable companions went with him. The rest of us are indeed scattered sand. If there is no one to restrain us, contradictions will inevitably accumulate. Therefore, in accordance with the last wish to build the group of immortal tombs, we pinned our hope on the later generations. Now that I think about it, this resuscitation is really a mistake." Hearing this, Wang Lu roughly understood the problem of the Dixian camp. As Xian Mo said, in the absence of a strong leader, internal strife in the Dixian organization was almost inevitable. If there was no grand competition, they would have probably begun to kill each other. How could those who cultivated the awe-inspiring righteousness coexist in harmony with the slaughtering demon? The demon lived by killing. If they killed people for no reason, should the righteous cultivators stop them? Would there be enmity in the future? If there was enmity, should they retaliate? In the absence of a strong person to resolve these contradictions, this team was certainly unstable. At this time, the grand competition organized by the Wanxian League gave them an opportunity to unite. In the early stage of the competition, the overwhelming momentum of the Dixian team also somewhat suppressed the outbreak of contradictions. It was not until Wang Lu began to lead the counterattack and turn the situation around that the contradictions broke out again. And the result of this outbreak was the deity stage team fight. Chapter 701. There were too many things hidden behind that terrible team battle. Why did Shuero 2, who had always been good at saving his life, lose his life in the match? Why did Mirage Boy's illusion technique seem clumsy? Why did Xuan Xian look relieved after his defeat? Why did Xian Mo look dispirited at this time? The answer to these questions boiled down to the fact that the internal strife on Dixian's side had reached an unbridled situation, which made people disheartened. The answer was not difficult to guess, but Wang Lu was curious about why no one came forward to intervene in such a serious situation. What is that ruthless black doing? This was also the question that Wang Lu was most concerned about. Xian Mo said with a wry smile, "He is the focus of this conflict." Many people questioned his inappropriate strategy in the early stage, which led to the current situation. Later, some people still supported him while some people fiercely opposed him. When the quarrel reached its climax, they even fought. Wang Lu asked with interest, "Did Black win?" Xian Mo said, "He didn't make a move, and even when he was injured, he restrained himself. Otherwise, he would have been the one to fight in this match." Wang Lu was even more curious. There were casualties? So, Shuero 2 and the others? Xian Mo helplessly smiled. They were all injured, otherwise they wouldn't have played so badly in the match. That's tantamount to saying that you were forced to fight as wounded? It's simply inhumane. Wang Lu frowned, thinking about what this meant. At this time, Wang Wu said in a deep voice, "Who's the boss on your side now?" "It's Tetragon." Wang Lu asked, "Who?" "He is one of the generals under the former leader. His inheritance of cultivation method has some connection with the royal soldier sect in the later generations. He is like a raging fire, but he is obstinate and self-opinionated. Unfortunately, his strength is extremely strong. In the past he was also one of the people who gave the leader quite a headache. I've never heard you mention it before. Xianemo felt helpless. Our two sides are still enemies. Is there a need for me to tell you everything? However, thinking about the current situation of his faction, Xianemo shook his head and explained, resuscitation was not long ago. Previously we thought that he had fallen into a deep slumber, so naturally we wouldn't mention him. This time, after his unexpected resuscitation, he was very dissatisfied with our situation, accusing us of embarrassing Dixian, especially Black and Baizé, and then, at this point, a sorrowful expression appeared on Xianmo's face, and he was unwilling to continue speaking. And Wang Lu could also guess what happened later. This tetragon obviously carried out a purge in a rage, using his powerful martial force to sweep away all the evils. During this period he naturally formed his own cliques and rapidly expanded the conflict. The Dixian camp was currently at a disadvantage. Although they had a very high cultivation base, they couldn't do anything to a group of later generation cultivators that they looked down upon. Most of them were obviously holding back their anger. Tetragon's overbearing means just catered to this part of the mentality. Therefore, all the original organization managers stepped down, and Tetragon took over the power with a new team with a tough attitude. Then he forced Shuero II and the others to participate in the deity stage group battle to wipe away their previous shame. Of course, wiping away the shame was just an excuse. To put it bluntly, it was to eliminate dissidents. This Tetragon was really ruthless. After so many tribulations, there were only a few Dixian people left. Yet, when he made his move, there were casualties. It was quite ironic to say that this kind of person was related to the inheritance of Royal Soldier Sect. Because although the style of Royal Soldier Sect seemed rough and straightforward, they were very particular about comradeship. It was an absolute taboo to make a move on one's own people. If someone dared to violate it, they would be severely punished. And this Tetragon, as the founder of Royal Soldier Sect, was really ruthless to his own people. It stood to reason that the enemy had internal strife, and such a character who could stir up the wind and rain, the Wanxian League should be celebrating. But how high was Wang Lu's vision? How broad was his mind? Without any sense of gloating, instead he seriously said, "Do you need us to help you eradicate the tyrant?" Xianemo was silent for a long time. This is an internal matter of our Dixian. If outsiders intervene, it would be hard to explain. Wang Lu said, "By now, the people on your side should know that we came to meet you in private, so why do you still care about the melon fields and plum fields?" Hearing this, Xianemo was slightly startled. Then he knitted his eyebrows and thought of something. "When you came, did you encounter any obstacles?" Wang Lu also thought of this problem. Previously, he didn't know that the internal strife in Dixian was so serious. He thought that Xianemo was hospitable and unguarded. Now it seemed that it was not Xianmo's intention. Even when she was drunk in her own house, she had to rely on the praying mat to sober up, which was also within the calculation of others. It seems that someone deliberately created a scandal between you and me, in order to further push you out of the circle. Isn't that Tetragon a reckless man without any IQ? How could he come up with this kind of conspiracy? Isn't it shameful? Xianemo said with a wry smile, "Tetragon only has a fiery temperament, he is by no means a reckless man. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to integrate his people so quickly. Alas, just now I was drinking to drown my sorrows, but unexpectedly, I fell into such a vicious scheme. I think by now the news of my private meeting with you has already spread." Wang Wu excitedly suggested, "In that case, why don't we make it real? I have the telepathic finger, which is very powerful and can help you feel like a fairy. This way you won't be depressed because others will frame you." Xianemo just pretended not to hear this. In order not to be framed, she simply took the blame herself. Only she could come up with this kind of nonsense idea. Fortunately, the person in charge of the Wanxian League was Wang Lu and not Wang Wu, so Xianemo looked at Wang Lu, waiting for his opinion. Unexpectedly, Wang Lu seemed to be inspired by his master and also suggested, "I also think that it is better for you to jump over now. There is no future here in Dixian, why not jump over and mix with us? As the first person who defected to Dixian, you will enjoy the best treatment, which is far better than being excluded here." Xianemo said helplessly, "It is impossible. Nothing is impossible. In any case, sooner or later our two sides will converge, the difference is which side is the leader. But now it seems that if Tetragon gains the upper hand, your end will be worse than losing to the Wanxian League. So in that case, why not surrender as soon as possible? Although we are divided into two camps, Wanxian League and Dixian, to put it bluntly, aren't we all cultivators of 9 regions?" Xianemo was silent for a while and then said, No, if I go with you now, no one in the camp can contain Tetragon. In the past he owes me a favor, so he doesn't dare to be too rude to me. Wang Lu said, since you are the only one who can contain him, then you are simply a thorn in his side. If you stay, he will use all kinds of tricks to smear you with dirty water, and you will end up losing your reputation. Why bother? I know, but I have no choice. You don't know what kind of person he is and what he will do. If there is no one to contain him, it will be a disaster for both sides. Hearing this, Wang Wu waved her hand in annoyance. Why is it so troublesome? In my opinion, it is better to write a letter of challenge to him, invite him to fight one-on-one, and then kill him on the field. Wang Lu sneered. If he really has the ability and courage to fight one-on-one, he should personally participate in the deity transformation stage group battle. Unfortunately, he is just a sinister villain who forces the wounded to fight on the battlefield. Xian Mo said, don't underestimate him. Of course he will fight. He will certainly wait for the next martial arts competition. To some extent he is a person more cruel than black. You must be careful. Wang Lu continued to sneer. Don't worry, as long as he dares to fight, I promise to help you solve this internal hidden danger. After that, the three of them casually talked for a while. After several unsuccessful attempts by Wang Lu, he said goodbye and left. Xian Mo's interest waned. He was only sad that his former comrades and companions had turned against each other, and he had no intention to keep Wang Lu and Wang Lu. After leaving Tavern Heaven on Earth, Wang Lu thought for a while and said, there is something fishy about this matter. Wang Wu nodded and said, it is indeed quite strange. There is actually a woman who would refuse my telepathic finger. It is really strange. I feel that it is a bit far-fetched to say that it is a coincidence that a tetragon woke up inexplicably and caused such a big commotion all of a sudden. Wang Wu said, if it is not a coincidence, could it be that someone deliberately ran to his side while he was sleeping and woke him up with a passionate kiss? You are so disgusting. What is the benefit of earning it back? The Dixian camp is in chaos and killing each other, which is completely convenient for us. Wang Wu wanted to make a joke, but when she saw Wang Lu's serious look, she also said seriously, perhaps they just wanted to bring in strong reinforcements at first, but they didn't expect that Tetragon's resuscitation would stir up so much trouble? Moreover, as the old saying goes, there must be great governance after great chaos. This Tetragon is so overbearing and ruthless, probably because he thinks that even at the risk of tragic sacrifice, he must completely integrate the camp's power. If those Dixian can really do what they want, it would not be a good thing for us. In this grand competition, the Wanxian League was able to gain a slight advantage. In addition to Wang Lu's efforts, the Dixian side's power was also an important reason. The leadership of Xian Mo and Bai Zhe was not strong, and the black-clad Dixian did not often appear. The Dixian side fought on their own completely by virtue of their superhuman strength. After occupying the initial advantage, it would be very difficult for the Wanxian League to gradually figure out their way and make some targeted arrangements. However, if this tetragon could integrate the power of Dixian and twist it into one, the Wanxian League's days would indeed not be easy. Let's wait and see. Tetragon is a double-edged sword. Before hurting us, I'm afraid they may not be able to bear it themselves. Speaking of which, I still think it strange. Wang Lu touched his chin and said, I always thought that the number one enemy was black, but now there is suddenly an inexplicable tetragon. This development is too strange. Dixian's resuscitation is inexplicable. Wang Wu spread out her hands and said, it was agreed that he would leave his legacy to future generations, but now that he woke up, he went back on his words and refused to acknowledge it. It's not surprising that this kind of person would do anything. Chapter 702. Regarding the Tetragon resuscitation and the Dixian camp began to integrate their forces, Wang Lu immediately fed back to the top management of the organizing committee. Hichu Daoren personally chaired an emergency meeting to discuss countermeasures. After a long discussion for half a day, the conclusion was roughly as follows. First, it was necessary to further strengthen the leadership, establish and implement the relevant responsibility system, and improve the cohesion and combat effectiveness of the Wanxian League team. In short, in the face of emergencies, the Wanxian League must have a stronger response mechanism and leadership. Naturally, Wang Lu was one of the main members of this team. Second, it was necessary to enhance their vigilance, improve their style of work, and resolutely put an end to their lax thinking. In short, it was necessary to keep a low profile from now on. The atmosphere of reveling for 3 days after winning a competition should be stopped in moderation, and some overly optimistic public opinion atmosphere should also be controlled. In fact, even without the Tetragon resuscitation, the Wanxian League also had a phenomenon of blind optimism. Many people thought that the Dixian camp was no longer a threat. As long as Wang Lu made his move, they would be invincible. This kind of superstition was undoubtedly a double-edged sword, and now it was necessary to restrain its edge. The advantage of the Wanxian League was not easy to come by. They must not lose it because of a moment of negligence. Third, it was necessary to strengthen the diplomatic contact with Dixian and always keep abreast of the latest developments. In fact, the early work of the Wanxian League was not very effective. It had been half a year since the start of the grand competition, but the official communication channel between the Wanxian League and Dixian was still not smooth. On the one hand, it was because the killing tactics adopted by the Dixian camp in the early stage of the competition had sharply worsened the relationship between the two sides. On the other hand, the situation of the Dixian camp without a leader had also made them unable to establish a real official organization. Therefore, if Wang Lu wanted to meet with Shen Mo, there was no open channel and could only meet in private. The fourth was to try to instigate some of the members of Dishan's camp, such as Shen Mo, Bai Zhe and Black, who had lost their power. The current situation of the Dixian faction was a coexistence of opportunities and challenges for the Wanxian League. A strong leader like Tetragon could integrate and disperse power. If they could take over the members she abandoned, the strength of the Wanxian League would be greatly enhanced. This task fell on Wang Lu's shoulders. Because the relationship between Wang Lu and Shen Mo had been widely spread in the Wanxian League. During the discussion, the four major tasks were assigned to different people. As the chief planner of the organizing committee, Wang Lu was involved in almost all the tasks. However, the most important task was obviously the fourth one because it was the only one where his role was irreplaceable. There was no shortage of people who were good at planning and design in the Wanxian League. Although Wang Lu was talented in this aspect, he was not necessarily the best in the world. He was only good at being creative and turning the tables in adversity. Now that the Wanxian League had successfully gained the upper hand, as long as the general strategy set by Wang Lu was implemented step by step, it would be fine. Many senior elders could take on this task, and it was not necessary for Wang Lu to do it. However, his relationship with Shen Mo was unique, and Shen Mo's popularity in Dixian was also unique. Through Shen Mo he could contact Bai Zhe, Black and the Calculation Immortal. It seemed that it was only a matter of time before many experts among the Earth Immortals joined him. Compared to the first three tasks, this task was the least difficult, but the effect was the best. It could be said to be immediate. Therefore, the theme of the meeting gradually became how to use Wang Lu to deal with Shen Mo. As the discussion gradually became more heated, the participating elders were constantly bursting with inspiration, and there were new ideas about how to rope in Shen Mo. From the initial reasoning to emotion, and with Shizhou impassioned speech, it developed to making friends. Seeing that the topic was rapidly falling to the bottom. In this regard, Wang Lu had a different opinion, so he had to interrupt in time. Elders, please listen to me. Wang Lu patted the table, attracting everyone's attention. Please pay attention to a problem. I participate in the organizing committee and serve as the chief planner. There is a basic principle. I, Wang Lu, sell my skills, not my body. As soon as his voice fell, he heard the sect leader of Yin and Yang school say with a sweet smile, "The way of sexual intercourse between men and women is indeed a profound art." Taoist Master Wang Lu is quite knowledgeable. Wang Lu snappily said, "Then why don't you ask the sect leader to choose a few great artists from the sect to serve Shen Mo?" The sect leader said with a smile, "How could those good-for-nothings in my sect dare to compare with Taoist Master Wang Lu?" Shizhou also advised, "Wang Lu, this is a major event related to the overall situation of 9 regions. You must not be emotional." Wang Lu sighed and said, "Supreme's high-sounding words are actually just to understand the reproduction situation of modern cultivators and Dixian people, right?" Shizhou said with a smile, "That's right. The two groups of people are separated by the age of chaos, and the laws of heaven and earth are very different. Strictly speaking, we are not even the same species. Whether there is reproductive isolation is worth investigating and studying." Wang Lu said, "If you want to investigate and study, please ask Supreme to do it yourself. You are the master of this, so I believe you will be able to do it easily." Shizhou stroked his beard and said, "Of course I will do it myself, but the first pass still needs you, Taoist Master Wang Lu. Capable people do more work, please don't refuse, Taoist Master Wang Lu. Don't worry, after you succeed in the first pass, I will meet you as soon as possible and cooperate with you. With my help, you will definitely be able to completely master Shen Mo's body and mind, even if she is Dixian. Wang Lu was shocked. Old man, do you have any shame? Asking for a threesome in full view of the public? While he was still in shock, he heard the master of the Yin and Yang school say with a smile, I have long heard that Shijojin is a master of this, which is very exciting. I wonder if there is an opportunity to compare notes with Supreme? Shijojin coldly snorted, crooked path. He had always looked down on those cultivators of the Yin and Yang school who were intoxicated with the pleasures of sex but refused to reproduce. The master of the Yin and Yang school said, I know that Supreme has always had a problem with our Yin and Yang school, so we have long planned to change the purpose of our school and do our part for the reproduction of the cultivators of 9 regions. Shijojin raised his white eyebrows. Is that true? The master of the Yin and Yang school said with a charming smile, whether it's true or not, wouldn't Supreme know if you personally try it? Humph, I do need to try it myself to know if you, a crooked path, really have the heart to change and return to the right path. We are all sincere. You must believe us, true monarch. While the two were talking happily, Hichu Daoren coughed, and a tyrannical magical power swept across the conference room, causing everyone's primordial spirit to tremble. Let's end the digression here. Wang Lu thought so too. There is indeed too much gossip. Let's talk about Tetragon. He made up his mind not to talk about selling his body to seduce Xianemo. As a result, the next moment Hichu Daoren turned to Wang Lu. Taoist Master Wang Lu, I will have to trouble you with the matter of Xianemo. F***C Supreme, you can't trick me like this. As the chief planner of the organizing committee, you have to do a flesh business. Where is the face of the Wanxian League? Hichu Daoren said with a smile, therefore you need to use your wisdom and use methods other than flesh business to win the other party over. I believe that with your wisdom you will definitely find a way. Unexpectedly, Supreme, who is known for being serious and rigid, would also play this trick? Seeing that Hichu Daoren had spoken, an elder in the conference room said with a smile, Taoist Master Wang Lu, your popularity among the female cultivators of the Wanxian League has always been high, and it is not because of flesh business. I believe that this time, you will be able to give full play to your specialty and bring Xianemo into your pocket. Yes, Taoist Master Wang Lu is famous. In the City of Immortals, I don't know how many female cultivators have shouted that they want to give birth to your child. You must not refuse again. Seeing that the atmosphere in the conference room was gradually unified, Wang Lu inwardly sneered. These envious and jealous faces were really ugly. After the meeting ended, the cultivators who participated in the meeting went back to their respective posts. Part of Wang Lu's work was handed over to Hai Yunfan for the time being, while the rest was distributed to other senior elders. What he had to do was to find a way to capture the fortress of Xianemo. This was very difficult. Otherwise, those elders would not have given this work to Wang Lu, who was suspected of selling his flesh. There was really no one else who could do it except him. After coming out of the conference room, Wang Lu immediately went to the heavenly earth, wanting to see Xianemo again. However, this time he could not enter the door at all. After putting his hand into the whirlpool of stars, he could not sense the location of the heavenly earth at all. Whether it was Xianemo did not want to see him or Tetragon did not want Xianemo to see him, in short, he could not go to the heavenly earth. Thus, the current situation suddenly became a deadlock. No matter how good the relationship between Wang Lu and Xianemo was, he could only persuade and rope him in by meeting him. Now that he could not even see him, how could he rope him in? Even a more pessimistic prediction was that Xianemo was likely to be defeated by Tetragon as a traitor because of the previous private meetings. But since the Wanxian League had given him the task, he could not give up halfway when he encountered a setback. If he went back and announced that the task had failed, he did not know how many people who liked to gloat would doubt his ability as a man. Therefore, even if it was a deadlock, he had to find a way to stir up some waves. Wang Lu stood in front of the whirlpool of stars for a long time, patiently pondering his plan. When he was about to put it into action, he saw the whirlpool of stars in front of him shaking, and a person walked out of it. Baize. The person who came was the former deputy of the Dixian camp, Baize, who was good at the negation technique. It was just that, when they met again, Baize looked tired and weary, far from the arrogant and unruly attitude of the past. Come with me. Baize lightly said, then turned around and walked away. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Lu followed. This time he did not have the #1 king pill in 9 regions as a bodyguard, and it was almost impossible for him to resist and struggle in the face of a Dixian. However, Wang Lu knew very well that Baize did not come to trouble him, because he held the token of Xianemo in his hand. It was an exquisite hairpin shaped like a plum blossom. The top of the hairpin was divided into 2 prongs, each containing yin and yang immortal spirit. It was the unique immortal method of Xianmo. Chapter 703. I can't believe we meet again so soon. In the middle of an iceberg, Xianmo was holding a fragrant tea in her hand. Her posture was natural and unrestrained, like a pure and clean fairy in the snowstorm. It was just that, there was an unconcealable exhaustion and sadness in her expression. Wang Lu looked around. In the middle of the snowstorm, there was a simple cave made of ice crystal rock that sheltered them from the wind and rain. Xianmo lived in this cave. Is this your new home? The decoration is simple enough. Xianmo let out a wry smile. Why ask when you already know the answer? This was the mysterious Frost World, one of the tens of thousands of small worlds in the group of immortal tombs. It was frozen for thousands of miles, and the vitality was extinguished. It was the temporary refuge for Xianmo, Bai Zhe and the others. Refuge. Under the inhumane suppression of Tetragon, Xianmo's good popularity finally could not play its role, and she was forced into a dead end. Either she was persecuted to death by Tetragon for various reasons, or she knelt down and became a dog for Tetragon. Xianmo was a cultivator whose cultivation base had reached the peak, so she was proud and arrogant. The dignified Dixian would never become a dog for others. However, she didn't want to die in the hands of Tetragon, so she had to choose to escape. There were tens of thousands of small worlds in the group of immortal tombs. If Xianmo wanted to escape, it would be difficult for Tetragon to catch her. However, your escape is basically equivalent to breaking your own foundation. In the Dixian camp, you are an extremely dishonorable deserter. Xianmo looked at Wang Lu. Isn't this exactly what you want? Wang Lu bluntly smiled. Yes, I was ordered by the Wanxian League organizing committee to instigate you. Now it seems that I have come at the right time. Xianmo shook her head. If you think that I will change my camp now, you are too optimistic. If I really wanted to betray the Dixian faction, I wouldn't be hiding here. Instead, I would have gone over to your side. If I wanted to leave, Tetragon wouldn't have been able to stop me. Wang Lu said, if you're so stupid that you still don't know how to switch sides, then there's really no need to rope you in. Xianmo nodded, then please go back. I will not abandon my identity as Dixian. Wang Lu smiled. I don't expect you to abandon your Dixian identity and join the Wanxian League. You don't have to join the Wanxian League to switch factions. Xianmo was curious. Other than Dixian and Wanxian League, are there other factions? Are you working for a third party? At this point, Xianmo's expression suddenly turned cold. Fallen immortal? Thinking of this, Xianmo was suddenly shocked. If it were not for the fallen immortal, how could 9 regions, which had experienced the age of chaos, give birth to such a genius? If it were not for the fallen immortal, how could so many of her companions die in his hands? If it were not for... While Xianmo was thinking, she suddenly felt something warm on her forehead. She was hit by something warm and soft. She was shocked and thought it was a unique hidden weapon. However, the next moment, the hidden weapon fell from her forehead and slipped past her eyes. It was a bun. But why was it a bun? In front of her, Wang Lu angrily looked at her and said, "This is the snack that I usually prepare for junior sister. Today I'll give it to you to nourish your brain. Did you just think about the fallen immortal?" Xianmo's mind was seen through, but she was not embarrassed. She wiped the oil stains on her forehead with a handkerchief and then carefully wrapped the meat bun. She said calmly, "Yes, I do doubt you. Now, apart from the Wanxian League and us, where else is there a third party? You can't be working for the Western continent people." Wang Lu sighed and said, "Use your brain. How could a person like me be a lackey? The fallen immortals can't buy me. We've known each other for so long, haven't you seen my unyielding character?" Xianmo declined to comment. Seeing that the other party had no understanding, Wang Lu had to make it clearer. It's very simple. The third party I'm talking about refers to myself. If you don't want to switch to the Wanxian League, you might as well join me. Xianmo was speechless for a long time. Are you trying to make me happy? Wang Lu said, I'm serious. Xianmo was finally shocked by Wang Lu's amazing boldness. A mere king pill stage young man who had only cultivated for more than 30 years actually told a Dixian to follow him. What kind of boldness or face did he need to do that? Even Xianmo's immortal heart that had not been moved for thousands of years was shocked. He accidentally squeezed the meat bun in his hand until the oil flowed out. Again, use your brain, my senior Xianmo. Now that you're joining a camp, do you need to focus on strength? The fallen immortal camp is the strongest, do you want to join them? Xian Mo retorted, but since you put yourself in the same position as the Wanxian League and Dixian, calling yourself the third-party force, at least the difference in strength can't be too big, right? Why not? The Wanxian League claims to be equal to all immortals, but do you think a behemoth like Xingjing sect can be mentioned in the same breath as the Seven Stars sect? There are hundreds of millions of countries in 9 regions. Among them, the large countries cover hundreds of millions of miles, while the small countries have a population of thousands of people. How much difference is there? Aren't they collectively known as 9 regions and 10,000 countries? Xian Mo shook his head and disagreed. You're just twisting words and forcing logic. After a pause he continued, I can't promise you anything, but at least for now, I, Bai Zhe and Lu Biechen, will not appear in the grand competition again. That should be enough for you, right? Tetragon may be able to integrate the strength of the remaining people, but those people are not enough to guarantee the victory of the grand competition. Some people are irreplaceable. Speaking to this, he remembered that many irreplaceable companions had died in the internal strife, and the grand competition, which originally had a high chance of winning, had gradually declined. He could not help but sigh. What was going on here? Seeing that Xian Mo's attitude was firm, Wang Lu no longer entangled with him. If the matter of instigating defection could be successful, then so be it. If not, then there was no need to force it. Not to mention that if it was just a few words, he would have to doubt Xian Mo's intention. This time, in addition to instigating defection, there are several things that I want you to do, Wang Lu said, and then his expression gradually became solemn. The first thing is, what is Black doing now? This was the most important question in Wang Lu's mind. No matter how others looked at it, Wang Lu always felt that the black-clad Dixian was the real trouble. This tetragon who suddenly appeared and disrupted everyone's rhythm, was like a passerby. There was not much evidence for this conclusion. It was purely Wang Lu's intuition. However, he felt that his intuition was credible, so the first thing he did was to ask about Black's whereabouts. He also hid, Xian Mo said. Tetragon attacked him the most ruthlessly. After resuscitation he almost killed him on the spot. Wait, Wang Lu interrupted, I remember you said that Black was extremely strong but he was actually killed on the spot? What is the background of this tetragon? Xian Mo said, I don't know. Tetragon was not so strong at that time. I don't know why he became stronger after he woke up this time. Okay, go on. After Black was seriously injured he went into hiding. Tetragon couldn't find him several times. Later he took the initiative to contact me and told me the location of this place. He said that among the countless small worlds, it is both stable and hidden, and can be used to hide when the situation is extremely unfavorable. In other words, your current position is not really safe? At the same time, Black has successfully hidden in the dark and controlled everything. This position change is really smooth. Xian Mo did not get it. Are you suspecting Black? He is not the kind of person who will betray his companions. Although his style of doing things is a bit extreme, but compared to Tetragon he is much better. Wang Lu did not argue, only said, do you have a way to contact him? Xian Mo hesitated for a moment and said, Black said that if there is something he will look for me, but he did not leave any contact information. Wang Lu looked at her, thinking that most likely he did leave, but he told her not to tell others. But since she knew it was good, there will be a chance in the future to pry it out from her mouth. The second question is about Tetragon, please tell me in detail. Xian Mo looked at Wang Lu but did not speak. Wang Lu knew what she was worried about. After all, Tetragon was her former comrade, a companion of the Dixian camp. But Wang Lu belonged to the Wanxian League camp. Internal and external contradictions must be distinguished. So Wang Lu advised, Tetragon is our common enemy. Only by getting rid of him can we both have the possibility of coexistence in harmony. You should be very clear about this. Wanxian League and Dixian are not enemies, but those who hinder our common cause are enemies. Hearing this, Xian Mo finally wavered. The woman's eyes flickered for a long time and slowly said, Tetragon is a very special person. However, after saying a sentence, suddenly the wind and snow outside the cave stopped, the clouds suddenly opened, and a majestic purple gas symbolizing the supremacy fell from the sky. At the same time, a magnificent and dignified voice echoed in the mysterious frost world. Xian Mo, you really disappointed me. Xian Mo was shocked, stood up and said, Tetragon? Chapter 704. That's Tetragon? Hearing Xian Mo's exclamation, Wang Lu was also very surprised. That's Tetragon? The devil incarnate who suddenly resuscitated from his deep sleep and disrupted everyone's rhythm? The tyrant who beat Xian Mo, Bai Zhe, Lu Biechen and even Black Shirt Dixian into stray dogs? In his field of vision he could not see Tetragon's real body clearly. He could only see the vast sea of clouds suddenly open up, and a purple gas poured down like a jade pillar, dyeing most of the sky a thick purple. The sound of the golden bell reverberated from the jade pillar, sweeping across the snowy land. After a moment the purple gas was like a thorn hurting people's eyes, and Wang Lu could not help but lower his head. Behind him, Xuanxian Lu Biechen explained to Wang Lu, Tetragon is born in the royal family, and is born with the emperor's purple gas. Those who are slightly weaker cannot even look up to its glory. Lu Biechen explained with good intentions, but as soon as his voice fell, his face changed, and then a trace of golden blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. What a domineering emperor's aura, and unknowingly committed the crime of talking nonsense about the emperor. Lu Biechen shook his head, sorry I can't say more. Of course, Wang Lu was not in the mood to listen for the time being. The enemy was already at the door, what was the point of listening to gossip? The opponent was Tetragon, who could force a group of people into a dead end, and was no longer someone that he, the immortal King Pill, could contend with the advantage of information. The key was to see how Xian Mo would deal with it. Tetragon, do you have to be so ruthless? The woman's face was a little pale, but under the pressure of the emperor's purple gas she was neither servile nor overbearing. I hide here with my companions because we don't want to kill each other, don't be too aggressive. Tetragon's voice reverberated in the sky once more. If I insist on forcing you, how could I allow you to hide? You guys stay here quietly, I won't pay attention to you. But you actually dared to leak my affairs to outsiders. This is undoubtedly a betrayal. The word betrayed was like a thunderclap. Xian Mo stood at the entrance of the cave and immediately propped up a small world. However, the emperor's golden words instantly shattered this world. The aftershocks shook Wang Lu so much that he was dazed and saw stars. Hey, control your power. Don't hurt innocent bystanders. Unfortunately, Wang Lu's voice was soon drowned out by the conversation between Dixian. Tetragon, do you really want to start a war? No matter how good Xian Mo's temper was, he couldn't hold back his anger. Just now, she propped up a small world to protect Wang Lu, but it was instantly destroyed by Tetragon. It was not that her strength was too weak, but she never thought that the opponent would really be so ruthless. The destruction of Dixian's small world would not cause irreparable harm to him, but there were hundreds of millions of creatures in a small world, all of whom were Dixian's companions for countless years. Destroying a small world was like cutting off one's arm, which was already an extremely ruthless method. Tetragon's cold and ruthless voice sounded in the air, this is not a war, this is a punishment. After that, the purple gas column that penetrated the clouds suddenly expanded, as if it was going to penetrate the entire mysterious frost world. Xian Mo's face changed and he looked at the people behind him. Do it. Lu Biechen sighed and threw out the calculation token in his hand. Tetragon has made up his mind to kill, there is no other choice. Do it. Xian Mo and Bai Zhe also expressed a rare affirmative opinion. Didn't you prepare for so long to fight with Tetragon? Do it. In the cave, the rest of the Dixian also spoke one after another. So Xian Mo began to act. The woman raised her hand slightly. There was no movement, but the mysterious frost world began to rumble and tremble. In an instant, the 10,000-year-old mysterious ice under everyone's feet cracked and countless cracks bloomed. Through the smooth ice wall, the cracks could be seen to be bottomless. In the next moment, the entire mysterious frost world was like an orange squeezed by a huge force. It began to twist and deform rapidly, and the pulp was squeezed until juice dripped. Countless smooth ice walls were squeezed by a powerful force and collided with each other. Large pieces of mysterious ice shattered into countless tiny residues. The mysterious frost world collapsed, the earth cracked, and everything collapsed. At the same time, a clear dragon roar shocked the whole world. Wang Lu barely maintained himself in the collapse of the mysterious frost world. At this time he only felt that this dragon roar was familiar, but in the next moment he was forced to panic by a collapsed iceberg pressing down on his head, and had no time to distinguish the dragon roar. After Wang Lu used the chaotic heaven-splitting sword chi to split a mountain into countless pieces, he finally remembered that he had heard this sound when he entered Xian Mo's tavern Heaven on Earth not long ago. However, what this dragon roar meant remained to be seen. After a while, Wang Lu finally cleaned up all the surging mysterious ice around him. The ice of the mysterious frost world was stronger than the mysterious iron of the mortal world, and had a trace of the power of heaven and earth that could freeze everything. It was not easy to deal with. After Wang Lu settled down a little, he could finally spare some energy to watch the battle. It was not easy to watch the battle because the battlefield was far above the ninth heaven, outside the mysterious frost world, and it had long been hidden in the mist of ice fragments. In addition, Wang Lu's side was full of glittering mysterious ice fragments, and his line of sight had long been cut into pieces. Only by using primordial spirit could he barely observe the edge of the battlefield. And the risk of using primordial spirit to explore the battle of Dixian level was self-evident. Wang Lu carefully released his primordial spirit and carefully felt the messy spiritual energy fluctuations around him, so as to reverse infer the situation of the battle. Gradually, a clear image began to form in his mind. A dragon, a four-clawed ice dragon with a body length of thousands of miles. It was the first time for Wang Lu to see such a huge creature. Before this, the dragon race in 9 regions had almost died out, but there were still some evil flood dragons in many deep valleys and ponds. The story of the dragon could be traced back to before the Age of Chaos. However, according to the historical records, even before the Age of Chaos, when the dragon race was in its heyday, there was no such huge ice dragon. For creatures with high enough cultivation base, it was not difficult to change their shape. For example, it was easy to make themselves bigger or smaller. With Wang Lu's current cultivation base, he could try to transform into a 300 meters tall giant, but it would not have any practical significance. Too big a body meant that it was easier to be killed, and it would not bring about the evolution of power. In the same way, many spirit beasts who were born with huge bodies, after their cultivation base reached a certain level, most of them would choose to transform into human form. It was not only because it was the most beneficial for human cultivation, but also because they wanted a relatively small body. Therefore, in theory, too big a body was not conducive to fighting. However, in Wang Lu's mind, this thousands of miles long four-clawed ice dragon was full of fighting spirit, crazily biting the opponent, forcing the opponent to retreat step by step. The opponent was naturally Tetragon. Unfortunately, under the perception of primordial spirit, Tetragon's real body was still not visible. He could only vaguely see a mass of purple light, which was also huge, which was exactly the same size as the thousands of miles long dragon. Without the explanation of Lu Biechen, Wang Lu could also guess that the bigger the better. As for the disadvantageous situation that might be encountered in the fight, the experts would not think so much about it. Moreover, with the peerless power of Tetragon, there was indeed no need to worry about the size difference. With his powerful strength, he could directly crush the opponent and there would be few opponents. However, no one could imagine that Shanemo had a dragon in his hand that was no less powerful than Tetragon. What was the origin of this dragon? How could he compete with a peerless figure among the Earth Immortals? Moreover, it seemed that it was clearly controlled by Shanemo. If this kind of heaven-defying thing was released earlier, perhaps the situation in the grand competition would be different. While Wang Lu's thoughts turned sharply, the ice dragon and Tetragon outside the mysterious frost world had been fighting fiercely. Both sides were the top powerhouses in the world, but they were outputting their power in the simplest and most direct way. There was neither a mysterious immortal method nor a strange immortal tool. The ice dragon did not even need to spit. It simply used its sharp claws and teeth and its powerful body covered with scales to hurt the enemy. And every time it bit or pounced on the enemy's head, it would make the purple cloud where Tetragon was tremble violently. Tetragon was like a sea urchin. In the circular purple cloud, beams of light rushed out madly like a spear and stabbed the ice dragon, setting off a series of scales and then cutting the muscles. Blood gushed out like a fountain, pouring down in the mysterious frost world. Everyone stood on the ruins of the mysterious frost world and watched the battlefield nervously. In particular, Xuan Xian and Lu Biechen constantly threw out calculations and deduced the situation of the battle. There were many Dixian who could not see the development of the battle, so they came to Lu Biechen's side and listened to his analysis. Unfortunately, Lu Biechen just shook his head. I can't see it clearly. Originally, there should be a 90% chance of winning, but just now, when I deduced, I found that the chance of winning began to waver, and the future gradually dimmed. How could that be? That's a G-Saurus. Wang Lu heard it clearly and immediately asked, "What is a G-Saurus?" The Dixian who asked the question was startled. He looked at Wang Lu, was silent for a while, and then replied, "G-Saurus is one of the foundations of the existence of the group of immortal tombs. It is the guardian of each independent small world, and it can also be said to be that small world itself. The specific principle is difficult to explain to you in a few words. But you have to know that every Gisaurus, after resuscitation, has great power. And this four-clawed ice dragon is a first-class powerhouse in the countless small worlds of the group of immortal tombs. Stronger than you, the creators? Stronger than us, if we are stupid enough to fight with Gisaurus head-on. The defect of Gisaurus is that it is impossible to be awakened for a long time. After a period of time, it will naturally fall asleep. Moreover, the longer the resuscitation, the longer it needs to sleep. Therefore, as long as we avoid a head-on confrontation and wander around for a while, we can naturally win. There's no need to fight head-on. But Tetragon would never fight like that. Wang Lu nodded. So you guys use this trick to deal with Tetragon? But why do I feel that this trick is a bit useless? While they were talking, the battle outside the mysterious frost finally came to an end. As the purple bald head once again thrust out its sharp edge, this sharp edge also slightly slashed to the side, and the Gisaurus was almost cut in half on the spot. A miserable dragon cry shook the whole world. In an instant, all the mysterious ice within a radius of thousands of miles exuded a dark red color, as if it was weeping blood. A moment later, the four-clawed ice dragon curled up, coiled into a ball, and then disappeared. The mysterious frost world was deathly silent. The Dixian looked at all this with livid faces, and their hearts were like dead ashes. Chapter 705. Gisaurus was the only trump card in the hands of Xianemo and other fugitive Dixian people. It was also their only hope. In theory, this magical creature had the strength to contend against a low-level fallen immortal in a short period of time, which was tyrannical and peerless. However, this hope disappeared in front of everyone. Gisaurus was killed by Tetragon head-on. Under the shroud of the Emperor's purple chi, the boundless atmosphere of fear spread throughout the mysterious frost world. How is this possible? Lu Biechen looked at the calculation chips on the ground with a pale face. He had calculated thousands of times, but he didn't expect such a thing to happen. Tetragon was already strong enough to kill Gisaurus head-on? When did this guy become so strong? If he had such ability, why didn't Tetragon show it at the beginning? After this resuscitation, Tetragon's temperament changed greatly, as if he was another person. Wait, another person. A flash of inspiration flashed in Lu Biechen's mind, as if he had thought of something. Unfortunately, there was no time for him to think so much now. The purple chi in the sky was getting thicker, as if brewing the next wave of the Emperor's wrath. Tetragon was really tyrannical, far beyond people's imagination. At this point, there was really no power to reverse the situation. I'm sorry to implicate you. Lu Biechen sighed and said to Wang Lu beside him. This was an internal strife in Dixian, but it accidentally implicated the people of Wanxian League. Although the two sides were hostile not long ago, now that Lu Biechen and others were also traitors in Dixian camp, he felt that Wang Lu was much more pleasing to the eye. Wang Lu himself didn't care and said, "It doesn't matter, you don't have to be so polite. Things are not that bad yet." Lu Biechen said, "Tetragon won't be merciful to you just because you're not on the Dixian side. That guy might not follow the rule of not killing envoys in a war between two countries." Wang Lu smiled and said, "I'm not that naive. I said it's okay because Tetragon is already a spent force." Lu Biechen forced a smile and said, "However, in front of Tetragon, the few of us may not be able to match up to Lu Peng." After witnessing the collapse of the world dragon, these earthly immortals were truly disheartened and had completely lost the will to fight. Wang Lu still smiled and said, "Senior Swanxian, although your arithmetic didn't work when you calculated Tetragon, you don't have to be so discouraged that you even abandon your own craft. Pick up your arithmetic stick and calculate again. If you can't calculate it, it's time for the Oriole to take action." The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the Oriole behind. Was there someone lying in ambush behind the fierce battle between Tetragon and Gisaurus? Another clear dragon roar pierced through the purple clouds and passed into the mysterious frost realm. Lu Biechen opened his eyes wide and looked up at the sky in disbelief. The arithmetic stick in his hand trembled slightly and said, "This is another Gisaurus? Black, it's black?" Outside the mysterious frost realm, a huge black dragon, which was even bigger than the four-clawed ice dragon, pounced over with a ferocious face. Tetragon said angrily, "Black, how dare you cover up for the traitor?" This Tetragon was indeed a descendant of the Emperor's noble family. At that time he had personally beaten his opponent and had to flee far away. At this time he even questioned why Black would cover up for Xianemo. If he didn't cover up for Xianemo, Would he really wait for him to defeat everyone one by one and cover up the sky with one hand? In a rage, Tetragon fought with the black dragon until blood flowed like a river. However, after all, he had just experienced a fierce battle and was not strong enough. Soon, he was bitten by the black dragon and the purple light swayed. Black, from today onwards, you are my number one enemy. Last time I showed mercy, but the next time we meet, it will be your death. After that, the purple light flashed away. Outside the mysterious frost realm, the black dragon laughed wildly after winning, and humiliated Tetragon's back to its heart's content. After a while, the black dragon nodded slightly at the mysterious frost realm, and its figure also flashed away. On the ice field, about 7 or 8 Dixian walked out of the ruins, staring at the sky blankly with a blank expression. Black, is he gone? Lu Biechin sighed. Black didn't come at all. He was seriously injured. How could he recover so quickly? He sent his own Gisaurus over. As he spoke, Xian Mo descended from the sky, and with a pale face he added, however, Black's Gisaurus couldn't make Tetragon stay when it appeared, and its aura must be locked on. The next time it makes a move, Tetragon will be able to follow the aura to find Black. Black sacrificed himself to save us. How did Tetragon become so strong? A fleeing Dixian was full of despair. When Tetragon regroups and makes a comeback, what should we do? The companion next to the Dixian was also full of despair. If I had known this would happen, I would have stayed. Tetragon didn't say that he was going to trouble me. Someone next to him was suddenly annoyed. No one begged you to come. You were the one who was scared to death of Tetragon and stuck your nose to him. Now you say that you regret it. Are you shameless? Xian Mo said, stop arguing. Just now, Tetragon's Emperor Purple aura shocked the mysterious frost world. Everyone's mind was shaken, so it's reasonable for you to say something delirious. This sentence was intended to smooth things over, but the next sentence was a bit tough. But in any case, please remember that once you choose this path, there is no possibility of turning back. Tetragon will not accept traitors. After barely stabilizing the morale of the army with a few words, Xian Mo found Wang Lu again. I'm sorry to implicate you this time. Tetragon is headstrong and self-opinionated, but he is very careful. He must have found you just now, and I'm afraid he will harm you in the future. Wang Lu smiled. Even if I didn't come today, will Tetragon let me go? After all, I am also a high-level member of the Wanxian League. It would be strange if I wasn't regarded as a thorn in their side. But if you really feel that you owe me, you might as well jump to my side. Xian Mo looked at him helplessly. This topic has just been discussed. Wang Lu said seriously, the treatment is negotiable. Don't joke, okay? Wang Lu said, it's not a joke. I am taking advantage of the situation. Think about it carefully. The trump card in your hand has been torn, and the trump card of Black has been used once, so it won't work the next time. Tetragon doesn't treat you as his own people, only as traitors, so it's better to be a real traitor and really betray for everyone to see? Wang Lu said, betray? What an interesting phrase. Could it be that you're a loyal dog now? Leaving the master is tantamount to betrayal? How can you have the nerve to say such a thing? Xian Mo, you left Tetragon because you don't want to be a dog, so why bother to lock yourself in the doghouse? Xian Mo was suddenly speechless. The Wanxian League and your Dixian are not life and death enemies. We are just opponents in the competition. But Tetragon obviously can't coexist with anyone. With such a person, our plan to join hands to fight against the fallen immortals is just a joke. Do you understand? Xian Mo was speechless. Can you let me think about it? Wang Lu said, yes, then while you are thinking about it, I happen to have some questions to ask. Wang Lu's question was about Gisaurus. Wang Lu was very interested in this creature that was thousands of miles long and could accommodate a small world. Before that, he could only see such a huge creature in the ancient books and records of the Age of Desolation. The Age of Desolation was born in the primal chaos, and there were all kinds of strange creatures. However, as the creatures of 9 regions multiplied and the civilization evolved, those magical creatures gradually disappeared, and the era of human beings occupied 9 regions. Wang Lu didn't think that those Gisaurus were creatures of the Age of Desolation. They had a very strong aura of human cultivators, so they were obviously human creations. However, if the Dixian could create such a big killing weapon, even if the use was very limited, the battle against the fallen immortals should be a different situation. Listening to Wang Lu's question, Xian Mo seemed a bit embarrassed, because Gisaurus was related to the secret of the entire group of immortal tombs. It stood to reason that only after the grand competition ended and the Wanxian League won a great victory could they take over this secret. However, when he thought that a part of this major secret disappeared in the hands of Tetragon, Xian Mo's insistence slightly loosened. These Gisaurus can only live in the group of immortal tombs. They are part of the group of immortal tombs. Once the beginning was made, the following words were logical. Xian Mo explained, these Gisaurus are the foundation of the group of immortal tombs. We built the entire group of immortal tombs through Gisaurus. At first, they were just a kind of creature that we accidentally discovered. They are very weak, but they have incredible magical abilities. They can accommodate a world in their body. This world is very fragile and unreal, like a gorgeous illusion. However, this illusion itself is very meaningful. We studied it for a long time before we gradually found a way to use this magical ability. Among them, the illusionary child had spent the most time and had also benefited greatly from it. His illusionary immortal technique had been perfected by referring to the universe inside the world dragon's body. Later on, when we failed to fight against the fallen immortals, we began to look for a way out and prepared to leave our legacy for the future generations. It was also Mirage Boy who first proposed to use the internal world of Gisaurus. That was really an admirable genius idea. Unfortunately, Mirage Boy himself has. After sighing, Xian Mo continued to tell her story. Now, these Gisaurus are the product of our transformation of the primordial species. We removed all the valves in Gisaurus's body that limited its growth. Then, we connected the feng shui line of the 9 regions with it and directly used the incomparably vigorous feng shui line of spiritual energy to support the creatures, so that Gisaurus could grow indefinitely. As the size of Gisaurus continues to expand, the internal world can also become extremely large, and eventually infinitely close to the real world. Of course, there are many complicated steps, but there is no need to explain them in detail here. In short, the foundation of the group of immortal tombs is Gisaurus. Wang Lu nodded. In short, the group of immortal tombs is actually a breeding farm? That being the case, there should be a lot of Gisaurus, right? Not that many. It is very difficult for Gisaurus to reproduce. Right now, the total number of Gisaurus in the group of immortal tombs is not that many. Among them, there are very few that are as powerful as the Black Frost Gisaurus. Moreover, these Gisaurus are not natural products. Once they leave the environment of the group of immortal tombs, they will die instantly. Therefore, they do not have any actual combat value. Unless the fallen immortals take the initiative to attack us, we can use them to fight against the enemy. Wang Lu raised a question, but in the group of immortal tombs, there are thousands of worlds, large and small. Moreover, there is a cycle of destruction and rebirth. What is the reason for this? Xian Mo said, Gisaurus are divided into 2 kinds. One is that the universe inside its body is fixed and unchanging, and the other is ever-changing. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages. The latter is mainly used to provide you with trials and treasures. Wang Lu thought for a moment and then asked, the number of cultivators who participate in the group of immortal tombs at the same time can be more than millions at most, and each of them will enter its corresponding independent world. Xian Mo interrupted, that's because some Gisaurus can accommodate more than one world inside its body. The world for your trial doesn't need to be particularly stable. The total number of Gisaurus is indeed not that many. Wang Lu smiled. No, I want to ask, how many of these millions of people can enter the universe inside the body of the first kind of Gisaurus? After a pause, Wang Lu said, if I'm not mistaken, your real inheritance is in the body of the first kind of Gisaurus, right? Chapter 706. Wang Lu had long speculated that the immortal dreamlands in the group of immortal tombs could be roughly divided into 2 types. One was completely randomly generated, with a variety of contents and a variety of rewards. In the early stage of the group of immortal tombs, most of the immortal dreamlands experienced by the cultivators were of this type. The other type was relatively fixed and unique in content, and its existence had a very clear purpose: inheritance. The 5 blood spirit crown power struggle that Wang Lu participated in was a typical example. The entire immortal dreamland was designed by Lan to inherit the 5 blood spirit crown. Later, the heavenly world was also the same. In essence, it was Xian Mo's mausoleum which stored Xian Mo's life savings. The fairy-grade flying sword Rouge Tears was one of them. At the same time, because the treasures in the second type of immortal dreamland were not forged by condensing the surrounding spiritual energy, they did not need to abide by the principle of equivalent exchange. For example, the difficulty of Wang Lu and his disciple in getting through the heavenly earth was actually much lower than that of Rouge Tears. After experiencing the second type of immortal dreamland several times, Wang Lu had judged that the existence of the group of immortal tombs was not to provide a crafting furnace for future generations, but rather an additional function of the group of immortal tombs. The real meaning of this place was to select the right successor, to pass on the real precious resources in the hands of Dixian, so that they could fight against the fallen immortals in the future. After the recovery of Dixian, this conjecture was confirmed. However, the core resources in the hands of Dixian had never appeared. Although Rouge Tears and several immortal treasures of the same level were precious, they were far from being able to compete with the core treasures of Dixian. The Earth Immortals had treasured it for thousands of years and regarded it as the only hope to turn the tables. It was definitely not just a few immortal treasures. This kind of thing was in the hands of the Earth Immortals, and the fallen immortals would only have more. Their cultivation base was higher, their resources were richer, and their treasures would, of course, crush the fallen immortals. And the Dixian would not be unable to understand this, so what was the trump card in their hands? It had been half a year since the start of the grand competition. In terms of points, the gap between the Wuxia League and their opponents was not big. It was possible to overtake them at any time and surpass them. The dawn of victory in the competition was already in sight. But to this day no one could say clearly what they would win if they won in the end. This was both normal and abnormal. Since it was the trump card that the Dixian were relying on to turn the tables, they naturally couldn't reveal it casually. If something were to happen, who could bear the responsibility? Even until the end of the grand competition and the victory of the Union of 10,000 Immortals, the Earth Immortals would only share these cards to a limited extent, unless, from the beginning of the grand competition, the Union of 10,000 Immortals completely crushed the opponent, leaving no victory points for the opponent. What was unusual was that even if the Dixian wanted to hide their trump cards, how could they do so? So far, no Dixian had ever walked out of the Tombs of Immortals. And after a long period of development, the Tombs of Immortals had been highly open. Almost all the immortal dreamlands could be freely entered. At least on the galaxy map, most of the areas had been visible. However, there was no place that was suspected to have hidden precious props. There was no need to really enter this kind of place. As long as it was found in the whirlpool of stars, it could not be directly entered, and it was heavily guarded. Or a place that was far away from other areas was worthy of suspicion. Unfortunately, so far it had not been found at all. Now that he thought about it, it was probably because the map in Zhong Xingming's hand was not complete. At first, the Dixian invited Zhong Xingming to join them, but Zhong Xingming's performance was somewhat ambiguous. Thus, the Dixian did not give him full trust and left the bottom secret. The place where the Dixian hid their treasure was not shown on the map at all. Therefore, it was impossible to find the relevant area according to the existing clues. Wang Lu had already guessed this step, so he simply probed by asking, "Your real inheritance is in the first kind of G-Saurus, right?" Sure enough, Xianemo did not have any doubt and nodded. This is... Halfway through his words he abruptly stopped. Xianmo's reaction was also very fast. However, after he stopped, he helplessly shook his head. His performance just now was already a confession. Wang Lu, this guy was really insidious. He completely took advantage of the fact that he was somewhat absent-minded and suddenly set him up, causing him to reveal a big secret. The treasure that was hidden in the deepest part was the greatest secret. Merely its existence itself was something that only a few earthly immortals knew about. Because of his carelessness, his secret was exposed by Wang Lu. This was simply the shame of a lifetime. She had always trusted him so much. The culprit, Wang Lu, looked at her with a smile. "I say, since we have already violated the taboo, we might as well do it again. You can take all the secrets and come to us. You actually have the nerve to say this kind of shameless words." However, on second thought, Xianemo had some thoughts of abandoning himself to despair. After experiencing the battle with Tetragon, he was completely unable to join the Dixian camp, so he might as well. But soon Xianemo thought if he really did that, what would be the reaction of Tetragon? Would he regard the Wuxia League as his mortal enemy? If that was the case, it would be a disaster for the entire 9 regions. Tetragon was very strong, not only in terms of individual strength, but more importantly, Tetragon now represented the Dixian camp, followed by most of the Dixian camp. If Tetragon refused to cooperate, then the cooperation between the Wuxia League and the Dixian camp would be empty talk. So far, Tetragon did not reject the cooperation with the Wuxia League. He just emphasized that he must hold the dominant position in his own hands. Therefore, he expressed anger at the successive defeats of the Dixian camp not long ago. At the same time, Tetragon was not a villain who went back on his words. He was willing to abide by the basic rules of the grand competition. In other words, Tetragon would strive for victory. But if he really lost, he would not break the contract. In fact, he could not break the contract. At the opening ceremony of the grand competition, almost all the Dixian camp had placed their immortal spirits on the 9 regions map. Once the two sides were separated, Tetragon would immediately become a lone commander. However, if Tetragon thought that the Wuxian League actively violated the agreement and interfered with the internal affairs of the Dixian, then it could reasonably suspend the grand competition and then regard all the members of the Wuxian League as enemies. Tetragon's character had always been black and white, and he did not know how to compromise at all. When the boss was still alive, Tetragon was like this. Now, after the unexpected resuscitation, his character seemed to have become more extreme. If the Wuxian League was included in the list of enemies, it would never be withdrawn. And that must be the situation that the fallen immortals would like to see the most. Thinking of this, Xian Mo's idea of changing camp faded. He looked at Wang Lu and said helplessly, "I can't be with you." When Wang Lu heard this, he smiled and said, "What's stopping us?" Xian Mo looked at Wang Lu with clear and guilt-inducing eyes. Wang Lu then changed the topic. "Are you worried about Tetragon? In that case, we might as well continue what we haven't finished just now. What kind of person is Tetragon?" "Sorry, I'm not in the mood to talk now, and it's not the time to talk. Tetragon is not a very patient person and may come back at any time. You'd better leave early." Wang Lu thought that this was indeed reasonable. This time the harvest was rich enough. He learned about the situation of the Dixian camp, saw the fierce battle between Tetragon and Gisaurus, and confirmed the existence of the secret treasure of Dixian. These news must be returned to the Wuxian League as soon as possible. In that case, I'll take my leave first. I hope that the next time we meet we can be in the same camp. Xian Mo said, "We have always been in the same camp. The camp against the fallen immortals." "Well said." Wang Lu cupped his hands toward Xian Mo, and then Road Rouge tears rose into the air, and left the mysterious frost world. When the flying sword crossed the sky of the mysterious frost world, it could be clearly seen that the once clear and clean earth had been covered with cracks and was filled with the color of death and defeat. Xian Mo said that the small worlds in the Tomb of Immortals were the inner worlds of Gisaurus. Now that the mysterious frost Gisaurus was dead, this world also died. No wonder Gisaurus could not be used as a biological weapon. Not to mention the lack of fighting ability of this creature, the price of death was too tragic. Fortunately, the mysterious frost world was just a refuge for Xian Mo. If it was her treasure house, it would be like this. Thinking of this, Wang Lu suddenly had a flash of inspiration and thought of a very important thing. However, just as this idea came to mind, before he had time to peek deeper into it, he heard a cold snort coming from the front. "Stop." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was shocked and immediately put away all his reverie. The king pill in his jade mansion crazily rotated, and all his true yuan was output to the rouge tears under his feet. His primordial spirit was connected with the sword spirit autumn beam. Together, they controlled the sword, bringing the small and light characteristics of rouge tears to the limit. Although limited by the king pill stage, Wang Lu's speed at this moment was enough to dazzle the eyes of a deity stage expert. Unfortunately, in the whirlpool of stars, there would not be such a weak existence as a deity stage cultivator. Although Wang Lu's reaction was fast, he still couldn't get rid of the opponent. He only felt that the galaxy in front of him was blurred, and the next moment he returned to his original place. Wang Lu was silent for a moment, stopped his true yuan and said, "What's the matter?" With that, his eyes turned to the source of the sound, but he didn't see the purple light. He only saw the petite and exquisite figure of a girl. She looked about 13 or 14 years old, still in her budding age, and her facial features had a clear childishness. However, the frost-like indifference on her face made her look a little more mature. But in any case, she was just a girl with a plain appearance. Not Tetragon? Wang Lu slightly let down his vigilance, but soon he realized that he seemed to be a little naive. "You're the one who led a group of trash to force us into a predicament?" The girl slowly said, "You have some ability?" Wang Lu's heart sank slightly. "May I ask who you are?" "I'm Tetragon." Chapter 707. Wang Lu really didn't expect that the situation of king against king would come so quickly. Although he had long expected that he would inevitably have a battle with Tetragon, it shouldn't be now, not alone. Regardless of strength or influence, Tetragon was at the top level. This luxurious feast should be left for the end, not as an appetizer. Frankly speaking, Wang Lu was still completely unprepared to face a madman opponent. It hadn't been long since he learned of the existence of Tetragon. Before Wang Lu had time to lay out a plan, he had already encountered his opponent head-on. This was Tetragon? Most people's first reaction would be shock and disbelief. The Dixian who fought head-on with Chenli Gisaurus and swept the mysterious Frost world with the domineering emperor was actually a young girl? Of course, cultivators shouldn't be judged by their appearance. Cultivators with small stature but amazing cultivation were everywhere, but it was rare to see such a huge contrast like Tetragon. As long as a cultivator passed the foundation establishment stage, he could gradually transform his body. After reaching the king pill, the body would often gradually integrate with his cultivation, which was the so-called appearance was born from the heart. For example, if the cultivation method was fierce and unrestrained, his appearance would also be rougher. The overbearing immortal method of Tetragon was something that Wang Lu had never seen in his life. It was even more unreasonable than the chaos heaven-splitting sword. Such a person was actually a delicate little girl? In a sense, Tetragon was really a pervert. She had such a strong power, and the shape of her body could be changed at will, but she refused to use a little bit of it for plastic surgery, which showed that she should be quite satisfied with her dignity. No, if she was really satisfied with her appearance, why did she always use the Emperor's purple gas to cover her true face? So in general, this was really a self-contradictory, psychopathic person. Wang Lu frowned and immediately came to an impolite conclusion about the other party in his heart, and then began to think about the next round. The moment he saw Tetragon, Wang Lu's mind began to turn frantically. He knew very well that he was by no means the opponent of Tetragon. Even if his strength was 10 times stronger, he would not be able to withstand a gentle sweep of Emperor Purple Gas. Although he was a high-level member of the Wanxian League Organizing Committee, and he had a lot of life-saving props, and the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall of Spirit Sword Mountain had also given him various treasures. However, in front of Dixian, it was doubtful whether these things would work. Therefore Wang Lu could only rely on himself, his own wisdom. He had to use the clues he had to analyze his opponent, dissect Tetragon's behavior pattern, and analyze her every move. Only then could he fight for a chance of survival. However, before Wang Lu could come to a conclusion, Tetragon took action. Look at me. After the unquestionable order, a pair of red pupils occupied Wang Lu's vision. Hey, are Tetragon's eyes red? Wang Lu was startled, and then his primordial spirit was awed by the red color, and he could no longer think about other things. This was a pair of soul-stealing eyes. Literally, it could hook people's souls out and suppress them. Wang Lu's non-phase immortal heart had already reacted in the first place, trying to suppress the overall situation. However, the gap between King Pill and Dixian was too big, which could not be made up by the characteristics of the method. Is that you? Tetragon's red eyes stared straight into the depths of Wang Lu's heart, and began to try to explore his secret. However, this immortal technique, which was similar to a soul-searching technique, caused a great reaction. Almost in an instant, 3 sword lights lit up in Wang Lu's primordial spirit, and they went straight to Tetragon. One was the 9-region sword of mountains and rivers, which was a gift from Hichu Daoren to Wang Lu, a gift for official business. Wang Lu, as the one with the lowest cultivation among the high-level elders of the organizing committee, knew the most secrets, which in itself was a great risk. Therefore Hichu Daoren hid a sword chi in his primordial spirit. Once someone tried to use the soul-searching technique to forcibly search Wang Lu's memory, this sword chi would explode, and its power would be equivalent to a full blow from Hichu Daoren. The other was the Star Galaxy Sword, which was a protective net set up by Feng Yin Taoist Master for Wang Lu. The purpose of this sword chi was not to hurt the enemy, but to open a way for Wang Lu to survive. The third was Wang Wu's non-phase sword chi. Its specific function was unknown, but Wang Wu casually slapped it into Wang Lu's body. Wang Lu also responded casually and did not ask much. With the relationship between the two of them, there was no need to ask much. Wang Wu was one of the few people in the world who would never harm him, so this ambush of non-phase sword chi must have its function. But now, 3 sword chi exploded at the same time, and the power was enough to make any cultivator retreat. Although Tetragon had a heaven-defying cultivation, she had consumed a lot of energy in the fierce battle with Gisaurus not long ago. At this time, in the face of 3 peak sword chi, she did not want to take it head-on, so she took a step back. It was this step that created an opportunity for Wang Lu. With the Star Galaxy Sword in the lead, it quickly swept out a smooth path for Wang Lu. Wang Lu immediately flew forward in the direction of the sword chi, and in a flash she traveled 100 miles. However, the next moment, a familiar red light lit up in front of her. It only took Tetragon a moment to catch up. The 9 States Mountain and River Sword, which was used as a distraction, could not entangle her at all, and the non-phase sword Qi was completely thrown away. Wang Lu could not criticize her. Even Hichu Daoren could not do it, so he could not ask Wang Wu to do better. Look at me. Behind him, Tetragon's voice was unquestionable. Wang Lu could not help but half turn his body. And at this moment, a woman's voice came in. Okay, I'm looking. With a loose white dress and an emerald green sword, there could not be a second person standing in front of Wang Lu. Wang Wu. Tetragon was taken aback by the sudden appearance of Wang Wu, but then he waved his hand and tried to drive her aside like a fly. In theory, it was easy for the Emperor of Dixian to drive away a King Pill Taoist master. Tetragon did not want to kill people, so he exerted just the right amount of force, which was exactly what a peak King Pill Taoist master could not resist, but at the same time she would not be crushed into powder. But this time she encountered an obstacle. After that palm strike, Wang Wu was like a spring breeze, and her body remained motionless. At the same time, the emerald green bamboo sword took the initiative and stabbed toward her face. Tetragon's expression became dignified. Looking at the sword light in front of him, he was a bit confused. Outside path? In Dixian's eyes, there was no secret. Wang Wu's King Pill cultivation base was without a doubt, but it was also a fact that a Taoist master King Pill Taoist master could resist his immortal technique. Combining the two, outside path seemed to be the only explanation. After seeing Wang Wu's identity as an outside path, Tetragon looked at Wang Lu with a much more relaxed expression. You are her disciple. Although you are not an outside path, but, in that case it is not you. Wang Lu was confused. Not me? At this time, Wang Lu could already see that Tetragon did not have the intention to kill him, but wanted to understand something from him. It must be something very important, and it was not convenient for too many people to know. Otherwise, Tetragon, as a dignified emperor, would not ambush a small Taoist master King Pill Taoist master. She could totally walk in front of him like she did with Xian Mo. So, it was not official business but private business? But if it was private business, what would it be? Listening to Tetragon's tone, it seemed that she was looking for someone who met the specific requirements. She thought it was her, but after finding out that Wang Wu was an outside path cultivator, she gave up her original plan. What was the outside path hindering her? Was there anything that Tetragon could not do that an outside path cultivator could not do? In a flash, Wang Lu concluded many conditions and puzzles, but the clues at hand could not help him continue to deduce, and his chaotic thoughts always came to an abrupt end. After confirming that Wang Lu did not meet the requirements, Tetragon did not stay any longer, but just nodded and said, after the competition, I will appoint you as my military advisor. Continue to work hard. After saying that, Tetragon's figure disappeared without a trace. Wang Lu watched her go, and the confusion in his heart grew stronger. I say, what is that thing? Pointing in the direction where Tetragon went, Wang Wu was also confused. The innocent girl who was abandoned by you? No, that tone of voice was very condescending, and she even appointed you as her military advisor. Is it the overbearing girl who abandoned you after you slept with her? Wang Lu pursed his lips. Yes, she thinks that I am too pure and not to her taste, so she wants to find some mature and charming type to serve her. I think you are good, you can consider applying. By the way, she is the current leader of the Dixian camp, and has the right to make decisions on everything. Wang Wu's eyes lit up. So, she is also in charge of the Dixian's treasure? Not bad, not bad. Do you have her contact information? Looking at the eyebrows raised high because of her audacity, Wang Lu felt that Tetragon did not seem so difficult to deal with. After returning to the City of Immortals, Wang Lu immediately found Hichu Daoren, and then held an emergency meeting to tell him what he had seen and heard, except for the last part where he was ambushed. Meeting with Xian Mo alone was an important mission entrusted to him by the Wanxian League. However, meeting with Tetragon alone was easy to cause unnecessary misunderstanding. Wang Lu only told Hichu Daoren about it and did not announce it at the meeting. The reason why he told Hichu Daoren was because in the short fight with Tetragon, he detonated the 9 regions mountains and rivers sword Qi. Hichu Daoren must know something, so it was better to be open and honest. The meeting naturally caused a great shock. The coup in the Dixian camp and the rise of the iron-fisted Emperor Tetragon would bring great pressure to the Wanxian League. The situation that had just improved was likely to disappear. For this reason, the elders at the meeting argued. Some thought that they should step up training and make sufficient preparations. Some thought that training was meaningless. Now they should strike first to gain the upper hand and find a way to bring Tetragon down. Others said that at this time, making a move against the Dixian camp would only give the enemy a handle. The meeting lasted for a long time, but no conclusion was reached. Even Wang Lu remained silent and did not stand on any side. However, this silence itself was also an attitude. Wait and see and deal with all changes by not changing. His understanding of Tetragon was still too little. What kind of change would she cause after she came to the stage could not be guessed by mere speculation. Therefore, he had to wait for further information in his hand before he could formulate a strategy. And further information would have to wait for a certain person who would not turn back for the sake of wealth and beauty. At the same time, in front of the whirlpool of stars in the Tomb of Immortals, a white-dressed female cultivator was holding a bouquet of brilliant flowers. "Excuse me, is Tetragon here?" After a pause, the woman said, "I'm here to propose." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.